Welcome everybody to Friday's Irish Whiskey Lock-in Livestream. We're here every Friday chatting about whiskey, opening a few bottles of whiskey, having a bit of crack at bringing on some interesting guests and connecting our community. We're far apart, we're stretched out across the world, and this is a chance for us to come together on a Friday night, raise a glass of something Irish with each other so that we can toast our health, toast each other, and toast some good Irish whiskies. We've got a great lineup tonight of whiskies. I've got 3 different whiskies that I'm going to taste tonight. And before we bring on our special guest, I want to share some of those whiskies with you. So the 3 whiskies I'm tasting tonight, and I'll share the reason why. I've got here Gold Rush from JJ Corry is the first one that's going to go into my glass for obvious reasons, because our guest tonight is Louise McGuane, founder of JJ Corry, the Chapelgate Whiskey Company. That's the first whiskey I'm going to taste tonight. The second whiskey that I'll be drinking is an old reliable Tullamore Dew original. I'm sure that's on many shelves. And why I'm drinking this is because I had a great interview with John Quinn, global brand ambassador and Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame recipient this week for the podcast. And I was hoping to have that live this week, but life got in the way, and I'll be releasing that episode next week. But I had a great chat with John Quinn, and I'll be drinking some Tullamore Dew this evening. And then the third whiskey I will be sipping on is Bua Irish Whiskey. And Bua, we had Martin Kennedy, one of the founders of Bua Irish Whiskey, on a few months ago to talk to us about his whiskey, collaboration between Martin and Pat Byrne of Byrne's Pub in Columbus, Ohio. And the reason I'm drinking this is because, well, I thought about Martin and Pat this week. I thought about Pat, who runs Byrne's Pub. I thought about the challenges that pubs are facing, not just in the United States, but in Ireland, obviously. And I thought it would be a good idea to raise a glass of their whiskey and bring some attention to their great product that they've released over the last few months. So those will be the whiskies that I'm sipping on over the course of the evening. So let me know where you are. I see lots of familiar faces joining us from all over the world: Norway, Ireland, United States, Japan, all over tonight, which is great. Nice to see so many of you coming in here every Friday. My turtleneck is back, and I put on a jacket for the occasion tonight. Believe it or not, first time in months there's a jacket on. Whiskey changes the wardrobe, it seems. Let me know what you're drinking and where you're joining us from. Good to see John Dempster in County Down. Eric Flynn, good man, Eric, supporting. Johnny McNally is joining us from Long Beach with his Redbreast 12. Chris Connors drinking the Gale in Michigan. Great to see JJ Corry up there in Michigan. Daytona Beach. What else have we got? Norway. Shamini is in joining us from just outside Oslo. Great to see you. And Eric is joining us first time in from Belgium. Great to see you, Eric. You're very welcome. And Kieran says this might be the first Stories and Sips live stream being streamed at an under-12s baseball game. Well, wherever we can, wherever there's a screen, we'll happily occupy it. Oh, there's Larry, good man Larry joining us. He's got his Gold Rush as well. Good friend of JJ Corry, Larry. Good to see you. And Richard's also got, in honor of Louise, a drop of JJ Corry the Gale. So JJ Corry coming off the shelves tonight for our live stream, and for good reason. In a minute or two, I'm going to bring on Louise McGuane, founder of JJ Corry, who's going to talk to us about her latest release that officially launches tomorrow and has been a great journey. She'll share that with us. Brian says, I'm looking sharp tonight. I dress up for the occasion for a special guest and for a special announcement tonight. I thought I'd throw on the jacket. Why not? I took all the dust off it after months sitting in the cupboard. Dara is drinking Connacht Whiskey New Make. That's really interesting, in Boston. And Steve is in Colorado Springs. He's going to drink Tullamore Dew, Cider Cask, 3 Swallow, and Bushmill 16. Jeff is up there in Michigan. Sunny skies, mid-70s. I'm in San Diego, mid-80s. I've got 45 fans pointed at me at the moment so that I don't overheat and pass out with both the excitement and the temperature of our show tonight. So a few little bits of housekeeping before we get started. The first is I want to wish happy birthday to one of our whiskey community, Colleen. Colleen Barrett in Ohio is celebrating a whiskey, and I know that Bua is in her glass tonight. She's a big fan of Bua Irish whiskey. So Colleen, happy birthday to you. Here's to another rotation. And also, I mentioned a few weeks ago that one of our community members sadly had a stroke and was in bad shape. And they weren't doing well. And the good news that I got today, I reached out to his family and found out that he's doing better. He's in rehab and starting to talk and starting to walk, which is great news for our community. And so you never like to see one of the community members in trouble or under the weather or anything happen, but the good news is that he is making a recovery and on the right track, and he's looking forward to Whiskey Live in 2021. He was supposed to go to Whiskey Live this year, and of course Whiskey Live in Dublin isn't happening this year in Ireland. Some other news, it's not happening, but here's to 2021. Maybe this year is a year we're all taking a break from these in-person activities, and then next year maybe we'll all meet in person in Dublin for Whiskey Live in 2021. So speedy recovery to him, and we look forward to seeing him back on the live stream and also up and moving about very soon. So let me see, where else are you joining from? Lots of messages there for Colleen, wishing her happy birthday. That's great stuff. And Maureen joining us from Canada with her redbreast 12-year-old. Tonight, we've got two main items on the agenda. The first is I want to have Louise from JJ Corry share with us the journey of the Lock-in, her whiskey. And then the second thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to have a little talk about something that we've been teasing over the past few weeks, our very own Irish whiskey, a Stories and Sips, Irish Whiskey Fans of America, Irish whiskey, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. So those are the two main items that we're going to have tonight, going to discuss tonight while we sip on our whiskey. So sit back and enjoy yourselves, pour yourself something nice, something Irish, sit in your comfortable chair, and I am going to bring in our guest this evening to join us. Louise McGuane, all the way from County Clare. You're very welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I'm always so impressed that when I ask somebody from Ireland to join, they stay up this late and make it look like it's about 5 o'clock in the evening with their lighting.
Yeah, it's midnight, guys. Midnight here. This is a nightcap for me.
So what's in that glass now?
This isn't the Lock-in, actually. This is the Hansen. This is the Hansen, and I'm pouring this because actually we had our first order for it from the US today, so it's actually going to launch over there in September as well. And this is a lovely grain whiskey that we have that is part of the core portfolio that's kind of going to be a staple for us moving forward. So it's kind of my starter before we move on to the good stuff, the Lock-in.
Great stuff. I have in my glass the Gold Rush, which made it over here to California. Was it late last year, was it? Or early this year?
Oh gosh, when did we launch that, Larry? It launched, I think, in the end, it took forever. That was a tough one. God bless Larry, was very patient with us. It launched there at the beginning of this year, I think, just out of California with Folsom Wine and Spirits.
And not too far away from where I am, so I was glad to get a bottle of that. I've been following your journey since I got into Irish whiskey, really over the last few years. You were well into Irish whiskey by the time I got into Irish whiskey, so you've always been there somewhere in the background. And I've watched with interest your story, and we covered your origin story and what got you into Irish whiskey and your experience in the past on our podcast, where we talked for a good hour about what inspired you and what led you to what you're doing. So for those of you who are joining today who don't know about Louise's background and backstory and how the company was founded, I'd encourage you to check out the podcast on storiesandsIps.com. And we won't spend a lot of time going deep into the background today. What I'd love to talk about today, though, is both this launch of your new whiskey, the process of how it came about. But before we do that, maybe a quick overview of the type of business that you are, because there are many people in the United States that don't know what a whiskey bonder is, and no better person to tell us than a whiskey bonder themselves. So what is a whiskey bonder, Louise?
So a whiskey bonder, we're a whiskey bonder, and very simply what that means is that we don't distill, we never will, we do not own a distillery. There are no shiny copper pot stills here on the farm. But what there is a beautiful rack house with a gorgeous library of Irish whiskey flavors that we source and we collect from the older distilleries on the island and newer distilleries on the island as they're starting to kind of come out. So we source all of our whiskeys, lots of different flavors, lots of different styles, and we blend those together to create our own unique house style under JJ Corry. It was a very old business model in Irish whiskey. we restarted it. You know, we were the first whiskey bonder in living memory. When we launched we set up in like 2016, really is when we really started with casks here on the farm. But we were part of the first wave of the new indie kind of producers on the island, essentially. And whiskey bonding has had a long storied history in Ireland. It was a key part of the fabric of the Irish whiskey industry throughout its entire long history, all the way up until about the 1930s. And it kind of died out and became a victim of the near collapse of Irish whiskey, just like all those kind of lost distilleries did as well. And there would have been bonders up and down the country, big guys up in Dublin, buying in spirit from the big distilleries up there, blending it and shipping it out over there to the US and all over the British Empire. And then really small guys like J.J. Corry, who was a mercantile owner. He sold everything from violins to gun parts, ammunition, and bicycles. And also, he was a whiskey bonder. So he would have sourced his whiskey from probably most likely Galway and a couple of other local distilleries, maybe as far as, Limerick, I should say, and blended those together to kind of create unique bespoke blends for his customers. And there was a J.J. Corry in every town, and there was probably 3 or 4 J.J. Corrys in the bigger town. And today, if you drive around Ireland, God bless you when you come back, you'll be very welcome when you do. You will see the term whiskey bonder kind of written over a lot of pubs, very often in gold lettering. And that's kind of a hangover from the real heyday of whiskey bonding. We've brought it back. We do it in a very kind of modern way for modern sort of whiskey drinkers, essentially, but very much within the spirit of what they used to do. We're 100% transparent about the fact that we source. We don't hide anything. We're as transparent as we can be about everything that we do. And for us, kind of that's what defines a whiskey bonder. We control everything after distillation. We shepherd the spirit from the moment it comes off the still all the way until it gets into your glass. We're very bullish on our wood program. We're very bullish on building out our flavor library. So we have lots of different styles and regional kind of expressions to choose from. And it's the path that we kind of are paving, I guess, to a good degree. And it's the path we're going to stay on. So we don't distill, we never will, we're a whiskey bonder.
A few years ago, this wouldn't have been possible, would it? There wouldn't have been enough distilleries to supply you with the whiskey, the spirit needed to create your profiles on the farm. But now we can't move for new distilleries, and that's a good thing, but it's giving you access to a whole new range of flavor profiles to build a library, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great time to be a whiskey bonder. When I started, there were basically 4 distilleries producing, and maybe not even producing. There were probably really 3 producing, and 4 kind of in the get-go. And now there's 33 on the books, let's say, and they're in various kind of stages. But now our timing kind of couldn't have been better, and it is the best possible time since 1860 really to be a whiskey bonder. It's back to the kind of heydays really of that level of choice of flavor, and of the exciting thing is there's all these small guys making really interesting Irish whiskey now with unique approaches. There's all of this kind of big terroir movement that's happening, and fellas growing their own kind of barley out the back and distilling it in the front, and the entrepreneurship and the creativity around all the distilleries around the island now means that our collection is going to be incredible. It would have been a very boring collection 5 years ago, but in 10 years' time, it's going to be a very exciting library of flavors.
John put a comment here, #Irish Whiskey Transparency. And I think if there's a word that symbolizes what you're doing there in County Clare, it's transparency. I stumbled upon what you were doing because somebody on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook shared a raw, grainy, probably pixelated video of you standing in on the farm, receiving barrels, taking them off a forklift, talking about what you're receiving. And I was wondering, who is this and what's going on here? But it turns out this was just one of many, many pieces of content you put out there to tell the story of what you're doing openly by just pressing record on your phone and letting people in.
Yeah, it's a very natural thing for us. I had a very exciting kind of international career before I moved back here to the farm, and I was here on the farm for a very long time on my own, starting the business and everything. So there was nobody else around. So the only people I had to talk to were the people on social media. And what we do is I find what we do fascinating, right? Because I had kind of an office job for a long time, and I always worked in the drinks industry, but I didn't make stuff. And I still get a buzz every time I open a bung, open a cask. And every time we get a new cask, or I go off to a cooperage or something, making whiskey is bloody interesting and really good fun, and I can't help but kind of share that. So God bless the old iPhone, it's just turn record on and say, all right guys, here's what we're doing today, because it's cool. I think it's really interesting, and that's how I operate as a person. Certainly I'm you kind of what you see, what you get sort of thing, and that's how the business operates now as well, as a result. Really, I kind of wanted to lift the veil a little bit on Irish whiskey. I just think, and I personally as a consumer want to know everything about what I'm consuming or purchasing or drinking or eating, and I want our people who drink JJ Corry to know everything they want to know about what we do. There's no secrets here. There's only one way to make whiskey, and but all the kind of intricacies that go in behind it, I love sharing that, and we do it every day across Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everything. And it's always sometimes very random, sometimes a lorry of bottles will arrive, and, there'll be a pallet of bottles flipped on its side, and I'll just turn the camera on that because it's not all glamour. But you kind of get to see, this is what it takes really to kind of start a small whiskey company on your family farm on the west coast of Ireland. So it just comes natural to us, but people seem to enjoy it, and we enjoy doing it.
And it gets people talking and discussing and debating the pros and cons, and everyone of course is in the peanut gallery with an opinion on what's good and bad and should or shouldn't be done. And the beauty of you laying it all out there on video and photography is that you're just saying, here's what we're doing, here's what we believe, here's what we stand for, and if you like it, great, we've got whiskey for you. If you don't, sure, look, you don't have to follow it all, and there's plenty of other brands you can follow. But I like that stake in the ground of, we have this opinion, and I think that more and more we're demanding as consumers to know more than price, product, convenience. We actually want to know what a business stands for and what they believe, and you're wearing that in your sleeve every day.
Yeah, and it's a really good standard to hold yourself to, right? Because if you yammer on about transparency all the time and say how you think it's really important and you're striving for it, you set yourself a standard, and we set ourselves that standard day one, So I can't finagle stuff now. I never would anyway, but we've put a standard for ourselves out there by advocating for transparency and living that every day basically, and you hold yourself to that standard by sharing what you're doing, because if you stop sharing stuff, people are going to be like, what's going on there? So it's a really good, for me, it keeps us on our toes as well. If stuff goes wrong here, we tend to also tell people that it's gone wrong, and it's a bit mea culpa. But it sets a good standard for the business and for everybody that's joining the business now as well. It's a great way of operating, and everyone, you deserve it. If you're going to pay, however much money from your hard-earned cash for our whiskey, you deserve to know why it's worth that and what went into it. Essentially, I just think it's a fundamental transaction between whiskey folks and ourselves that we deserve that. Thank you for buying us, and here's why. We hope you think it's worth it.
It's a valuable trade. I think it's an equal trade. We give you the money and you give us more than just the liquid in the glass. And I'll be the first to vouch for the transparency side of things, because it's probably now almost a year ago, myself and Mrs. Stories and Sips we're flying into Ireland, into Shannon, and I reached out to Louise and said, can we swing by and have a look? Gates opened, in she brought us and showed us everything, including the kitchen sink, sit down, have a coffee in the kitchen, and then tour and talk about the same things that are on Twitter and Instagram. There's nothing hidden. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I value that connection and feeling like I'm part of it, from what I see online and then ultimately experiencing it in person. Before all of this madness hit then, Louise, you had started to open up the farm to to tours and to groups, hadn't you?
Well, very limited, like, so
Yeah.
we're not, I don't know anything about tourism. And I always say this to people, I haven't got a clue, right? About that. Like our job is to make really good whiskey and send it all over the world and put it into people's glasses. So, but I said, we get, we could just do tours all day long if we wanted to. And there was a great deal of interest. And so we were working with some tour, because we're tour agencies, if you like. We are a working farm. Like my dad is 85, right? And he still operates this farm. Tomorrow morning we have to get up and move some new cattle and do some wiring and stuff like that. Like it's a farm. And we're not set up to kind of welcome coachloads of visitors and stuff like that. It's just not operationally, we can't do that. But I did think, in the summer season, sure, we'll open up to sort of overseas tour groups who, put you in their itinerary and 12 at a time will come along, and it's quite well organized and stuff like that. So we were opening up for that in March, and we had loads of bookings, and it was looking very good. And then lockdown. That didn't, but we'll that'll happen. It'll happen, and maybe next year or the year after when tourism begins again. We've opened up domestically for tours, and we've learned a lot, huge amount from that. So so tourism obviously is a no-go for a couple of years for us.
Give our audience an idea of where you are located in the world. So for our American audience, how would you describe where the farm is located?
So we are on the left coast of Europe. So if you look at a map of Europe, we're the farthest west. We have a pub here in County Clare that's called the last pub before New York. Like it's that west. So if I jumped off the cliff over here, a mile and a half away, and I started swimming west, I'd hit Boston. We are right on the coast, and we're very close to Shannon Airport, which is the West Coast airport here. Like we're about 25 minutes from there. It's called the Wild Atlantic Way. 40 shades of green, beautiful agricultural, real Ireland. If you've seen The Quiet Man, you've basically been in my village kind of thing. Like it's like that. And it's north of Cork. A little. It's not Cork exactly. It's north of Cork. It's in the Banner County Clare, best county ever. Very, very beautiful spot.
It's not Cork, but it's maybe the next best thing to Cork. We like to measure everything here in relation to where it is in proximity to Cork.
Yeah.
The audience well trained.
Above Cork. It's above Cork as the crow flies, basically.
Above Cork, yeah. We have a couple of questions I want to talk about the Lock-in, your latest whiskey, because there's a great story behind it. A couple of interesting questions. One comes in from another whiskey man, Dave Cummins. What are the cattle that you have on your farm? He thinks he's seen a few Friesians and Herefords in your videos.
Friesians. My dad has this really, really good line of, he's been breeding these things for 50 years. And it's this Friesian line. And then some of them are crossed with Charlies, I think. And they're really good milkers. And there's a few limousines as well, right? He actually had to give up the dairy. Like he was milking cows until March, actually. And he's 85, he can't do it anymore. So he had to give that up. So now he raises sucklers. And we have all these baby calves coming on the farm tomorrow, actually, which is quite cute. But mostly Friesians, well spotted.
If you've just joined us, welcome to Farming Weekly, where we're honing in on the cows that live on whiskey properties around Ireland.
There's not that many of them, yeah.
No, there's not. There's very few. I know a Waterford distillery has some goats on their property. You've got cattle.
They're just show goats. They're show goats. I love Waterford Distillery, but there's no show animals on this property. I have to go out and move them tomorrow. Let's just be aware that that's happening.
What's a show goat? It just lives there for show.
You bring them in for show, so everyone can take photos of them. Like the other day, Eric was leaving work, and he said he's at the bottom of the gate, and he had to call me, and he said it was like a cow emergency, and we all had to go down and deal with this cow emergency. They were eating bales or something. No, we should move on from cow talk, but we have real cows on the farm. No show cows here.
We got to talk of horses now and everything. I know you'll be feeding the horse and riding the horse around the property as well. Nothing is lost on this audience.
Yeah. Let's talk about whiskey first.
All right, let's
I
move
have
on
a horse.
from.
Her name is JJ. Yeah. Let's go to whiskey.
Okay, those of us in Iowa appreciate very much the livestock discussion, apparently. Okay, well, listen, we'll create a separate channel for whiskey livestock and whiskey animals, sheep, goats, all things being mentioned here. Okay, so we're moving on from that. One more question before we talk about the lock-in whiskey, and that is, it comes from Richard, and it may have been answered in the comments already, but he's curious whether the whiskey that you buy, is it all new make whiskey that's straight off the still, or is it a mixture of that and aged whiskeys that you start with?
Both, right? So we buy whiskey in cask, what I call living whiskey, right? So we buy stock that's some way down the level of maturity, right? So we have stocks of like 90, nearly 30-year-old now, and anything from like 3 to 30-year-old we have stocks of sitting around essentially. Buying malt whiskey in Ireland in particular, it's nearly impossible now. It's like hen's teeth. It's like unicorn tears essentially. We went out and sourced quite a bit of whiskey back in 2015, and we've been lucky enough to source a little bit here and there since. But opportunistically, I buy as much aged stock as I can, because we need to wait for the newer stock to mature, and we need those older stocks to kind of get ourselves going, et cetera. But it's quite difficult. And then the new make stock that we buy, we treat a bit differently. I can't control the prior casking of older stock, obviously. And we sometimes we'll move stuff on from 2 different casks, but we buy in cask. New make stock, we assess the liquid, we assess what cask it should go into, and then we match them both and we put those together. So the new make we have total control over. Obviously the older stocks, they're already mature, and even like some of my older stocks don't even sit here on site all the time. All of our new make stocks sit here and they mature here on site, but some of our older stocks sit at a different warehouse, and we'll just call them down as we're blending or as we're like replenishing the warehouse or whatever. But yeah, we buy 2, and we'll always do that. If somebody comes up and says, oh, we have some 5-year-old, I'll look at it and we'll go, okay. But that's part of being a whiskey bonder. You buy both elements.
And if you follow along on Louise's social media channels and follow JJ Corry, you'll see occasional little glimpses into what will come down the line, like where a barrel might get delivered from an empty barrel, or when the full barrels come. And it's interesting to see and start to piece together what we might see in the future. But it's fascinating to watch this whiskey library growing and growing and growing. This is a picture here of when I visited more than a year ago now, and I know that there's far more whiskey than this in the warehouse at the moment, and I think it's stacked higher than 1 row, isn't it?
Yeah, we have 3. We're up to 3 rows basically, because we're racking and we're doing kind of Bordeaux style racking nearly. We don't have really fancy steel racks or anything, so we're gone as high at the moment as a couple of months ago, kind of during lockdown actually. And so it's a very different scene now actually than it was. I am, all going well, my plan is to build another massive rack house, much bigger than that one here on the farm. Like I have this quarry on the farm here, and 3 sides of it are rock, and it's already kind of carved out. So my plan is to build a rack house on that with a southern aspect that has much more capacity. That rack house is nearly full. The only good thing about that rack house is that we are actually emptying it quite quickly, as well as we're creating new blends. So it doesn't just fill up and then stay filled. There's a bit of a cycle going on there. But we're going to need a bigger boat. Like we're going to need a bigger rack house, and I'm going to build it in the quarry. That's literally
This is good news.
Literally that is just an idea that I have. But what tends to happen here in JJ Corry, if you have an idea, it then just magically happens with a lot of hard work. But yeah, we're going to do that probably 2021.
I also know that when you say things like I'm going to build, I don't think you mean other people are going to build it. Like I have images of you out there with saws and hammers and cement mixers. Like that seems like the life on the farm is we're going to do this thing.
Yeah, you just do it, right? So when we built the blending room, I was like, somebody gave me a ridiculous quote for the blending room to build it, and I said, "No, I'm going to build it myself." And we did, and we did. Like it was really good to cut my teeth on building the blending room and managing, all the suppliers and the concrete and all that kind of stuff, and like physically making it happen, and making huge amounts of mistakes along the way, and all the rest of it. And that was kind of a training ground for me in my head for the next rack house, because I wanted to be like this huge, big, beautiful thing, but that's very functional. So we kind of tend to do kind of test projects and then go, all right, we can do that 10 times bigger the next time. And we just get it done, muck in. It's a farm, you muck in,
Bring the neighbors in with their tractors and their ropes and their forklifts.
Couldn't survive without the neighbors. We didn't have a forklift for like a year and a half. Like the neighbor was helping us.
Human forklifts.
Incredible.
So let's talk about what happened over the past few months. The world changed very quickly. Before it changed, you were on this incredible travel schedule. You were all over the world. I mean, going back 2 years now, I met you in London. You launched one of your amazing whiskies, The Chosen, in London. You've been in Asia pushing Irish whiskey and your brand, and then suddenly this world changed, and the plans to open the farm changed, and travel changed. That put a bit of a spanner in the works for a while, but you had an idea that wasn't going to stop you.
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to be basically 6 months of this year. Like, I think I was probably going to be coming home now from a load of travels. Our big plan this year was expansion by new markets, like in a lot of Asia and all kinds of things like that. So yeah, like I haven't really processed lockdown. It's like one of those things, as a small business owner, it has been it's been a terrible time for everybody, but like as a small startup-y kind of, in growth business owner, particularly in whiskey, which is very high risk to begin with, and capital intensive and all the rest of it, it was very rough going. It was really rough going. Like it was, doing really well, exporting lots of whiskey, selling lots of whiskey, having a business plan in place and new whiskeys in the pipeline and everything going like that, to then suddenly, I graphed it. Like I did graph it like about 2 weeks ago. Everything was going like that, and then it just went that. Like, I think in March we did like 200 euros of business or something like that. Like literally, like, St. Patrick's Day, like, biggest month of the year.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it just stopped. And everybody shut down. We all know the story. Everything shut down. Everyone shut down. Nightmare. So tough going. Like, and I think that you need two things in a crisis. This is what I've learned from this whole thing so far. What I've learned is you need two things in a crisis. You need cash and you need courage, right? And we had a little bit of cash in the bank. We were lucky enough to have a little bit of cash in the bank. But we had most of was courage as a team and as a business. And as whiskey makers. So, there came a point where we were locked down, like everybody was off site, and there's not that many of us to begin with. No business, no revenue, no tourism, no nothing. We had just hired somebody to manage tourism. There are people working for the business who have families, stay awake at night kind of stuff. And every day we would have a team meeting and we'd go like, oh my God, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We started off doing a friends and family offer, and then I started selling hats, and it was like, what is not nailed down here that we can just keep the business going? And then one of the ideas that came out was the idea of kind of getting people involved in a blend, like talking to maybe Irish whiskey clubs and getting them involved in a blend or something like that. And then the entire team then got on it, and we were like, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Everybody is sitting at home. This was deep lockdown. Everyone was sitting at home. And you'll know yourself, and anybody out there will know, the entire whiskey community suddenly went online in a way that perhaps in a volume really that they hadn't before. And every night there was a tasting, and every night there was something going on, and there was small groups and big groups and all sorts of stuff. And it was the only way we could talk to people anyway. And so we said we'd do a crowdsourced blend because everyone's sitting at home in their living rooms with nothing to do in the evening, on Zoom calls and all the rest of it. And it was a very natural progression for us. As we've talked about, we share everything that we do anyway. We'd always wanted to do a Facebook live stream of a blend, just to like plonk a camera in the corner and just blend something so that people could tune in and out as they wanted to. But it's just one of those ideas that never came to fruition. So we said we would do a crowdsourced blend, meaning we would create a blend just for lockdown, and we would get all those people out there in the virtual world who were fans of JJ Corry, our enthusiasts of JJ Corry, to help us to shape the blend. And we'd be very, again, transparent about how we did that and the process around that, et cetera, and kind of share the journey, with people. And so the lock-in, which I have here, was born. The idea for the lock-in was born. And
put this up on full screen for you there.
Oh yeah, there it is.
So
yeah, it's got a roundy label. Yeah, that's the lock-in.
So let's talk about how it got to be in the bottle. So I've got here, I received this little postcard in the post in the mail that detailed the crowdsourced blend, and accompanying this were 3 little sample bottles. And inside these bottles were different samples, that the idea being that you receive these, and a number of people around Ireland and overseas received these, so that we could contribute our thoughts on what we liked, what we didn't like, ABV, profile, nose, etc. And then we joined in with a live stream. There's a screen grab from your live stream that you did, where you had them all in front of you, and you had your measuring cylinders and your bottles, and you talked us through what we had in our hands and started engaging us in a conversation about what we liked, why we liked it, and what your thoughts were. And ultimately, it sounds like you took all that back to the table, and you either made it look like we were all part of this, and you were very kind in making us feel like we were part of it, and you already had a master plan, or no, you actually took this back and said, all right, there's some good ideas that have come out of this. Here's what we're going to make.
Yeah, and again, that's exactly what happened. I was alone on site. We actually originally put 4 blends together, but we only managed to send out 3. There's probably a good reason for that. I don't remember why. But we sent out 3, and it was a selection of 6 casks and different ratios of whiskey that had gone on to each, and it ended up being like 70%. We knew it was 70% grain, 30% malt, but it was just 3 very different iterations of that. I actually like blend number 1. That was my preference, to be honest with you. But we put the entire thing to a vote. After everybody came off of that experience, there was 200 of those packages mailed globally. And then we all got online on June 7th, I think, to talk about it and to get feedback from everybody. And there was a massive calling on, and because I had said to the team prior to doing the Zoom thing, I was like, I think we should ask them about ABV and give them a choice, because normally we bottle at 46-point-something% because it's a nice number for us. We don't have to chill filter. Sometimes we go lower, but for whatever reason, JJ Corry ends up like that. And there was a load of people in the room, the virtual room, who wanted to do cask strength. We had no plans on doing that at all. The vote came in, after everybody got off the Zoom call, they could go beep, beep, boop, press a button in their email and vote. And I think it was 47% blend number 1, and then the remainder, 52%, was blend number 2. Number 3. And basically number 3 won. So we went with number 3, and then we decided, okay, the people have spoken as well. There's enough people there who want that at cask strength that we're going to bottle it at cask strength as well. So so the release is actually ended up being only about 430 something bottles in total, and some of that is cask strength, and then 300 and something of it is regular strength at 46.8%, and then the rest of it is cask strength. So it ended up being 2 different iterations, exclusively based on feedback. And the final blend was exclusively based on the people who were there that night. That's what they voted for, and that's what we delivered. So it was really good learning.
But you're a brave woman listening to people who just had 3 or 4 whiskeys and then telling you what they like and turning that into something commercial. Brave taking the advice of the public.
Well, you have to listen to people. Well, yeah, but the thing is, it's very easy to get a house palate. And I have I'm guilty of this for a long time. I've worked in the drinks industry for a long time, and I always end up getting a house palate. When I worked in Champagne, I had a house palate. I always end up going you get to know it too well. So it's really good, to put it out there and listen to what people want, and if that's what people want. We also gave people a bit of an opportunity to kind of comment on the direction of the label. And that's nearly braver than commenting on the whiskey, because everybody has an opinion on a label.
That's right.
We tried to get people kind of as involved as possible, because that was the spirit of it. They were all sitting at home. Everybody's miserable. It's hardcore lockdown. It was our way of connecting with people on a really personal level and opening the doors as much as we could and saying, come into this process and we're sharing with you as much as we can, and you can influence this now. So I thought it was really cool. It was a really interesting thing to do.
It is remarkable. I mean, I am joking, of course, by saying how brave you are, because what you've really done there is you've asked people what they want, and then you've made it available to them, and they go buy it. And this is the purest form of capitalism we can possibly have. It should be celebrated. Yeah,
and remember, but again, it's delivering value to a good degree to people. It's saying to people, all right, lads, we're going to create a whiskey. You're going to help us, and then we're going to make it available to you. I think it's a nice transaction. It's less cynical, I think, than it could have been. But Absolutely. It was lovely. It was just a really, we'll probably do it again in some capacity, just because it's just great to connect with people on that level and give them ownership. It's like I say, everything. I love opening casks, and I love, doing all that, disgorging casks and everything. It's really cool. And if I could give everybody the opportunity to do that, I would, but we can't. So having a part of the process, or being part of the process, was really, really fun.
So how long did it take from planning, having this idea, until it was in the bottle, ready to be sold?
So in JJ Corry timeline, it was an eternity, right? Absolute eternity. Because I remember having the conversation, and somebody said to me, it'll be ready in August. And I was like, sure, we'll be dead by then, basically. Not in a COVID way, just we'll all have forgotten about it. It's launching tomorrow on Irish Malls. It's out, and Asher, I'd say we probably had the idea, it was maybe April, maybe April, May. And the big delay was getting shipments to the US, because everything was weird about getting stuff shipped to the US, really. That was the longest time period. And then, we got it bottled then week before last, and now it's hitting the market tomorrow. So a couple of months, but for us, I would have liked it to happen in a month, but we couldn't make it go that fast. But a couple of months, and for us, that's a very long time. We're very nimble.
I want to be in the room when you are with the team, and Eric and Niamh, and they're all there, and Blaze, and you say, I have an idea, and I think it should be in a bottle in a month. And they all look at each other awkwardly, and have to, one of them has to step forward and say, now, Louise, it's a great idea, but here's the reality.
Yeah, Blaze usually does that now. But somebody does it. But we're a very small team. We're very nimble. That's what being a bonder is it's lovely to have total control of our own destiny. We can say tomorrow, I can say, I cask number 1146, I'm going to disgorge that tomorrow. And then I'm going to proof it over 5 days, and then I'm going to bottle it on Friday. Thank you very much. There's nothing in the process. There's nowhere that anybody can stop us in the process, except some bureaucracy around labelings or something. But we have control of our own destiny. So we're fast moving, which is great.
And the reason I wanted you to come on here and talk about this was not because I wanted to issue you with legal proceedings for the use of the name, the Lock-in. I think we both agreed that I didn't invent it. But
so, we should talk about that, because, we had the idea and naming our whiskeys. I love naming our whiskeys, right? They always have to start with the, okay? So it's always the something. And normally the names there'll be days of research, historical research that goes into these things usually, because I love the naming piece. And the naming thing, I remember being on the phone, everybody's offsite, being on the phone and going like, what are we going to call it? What are we going to call it? What are we going to call it? And I said the Lock-in. And then somebody on the line was like, after about 10 minutes, was like, hang on, that's the name of Barry's. You had just launched it, Barry's livecast, and I was like, oh, I'll talk to him about it. Like, I was like, it's not proprietary, but we didn't copy you. It's a name.
No,
but,
and of course not. Yeah. No, yeah, it's a piece of we've talked about the Lock-in and the origin of Lock-in and the etymology of Lock-in many times here. It's something that's part of Irish heritage and Irish lawlessness that we all treasure.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So you mentioned there one of the delays was the US. Did you ship some of this to the US, or is it all via Irish malts?
So the delay was the shipping the little baby samples to the US. That's all that was.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Gotcha.
This all went to Irish malts because there's not that much of it, and they pretty much have global coverage. So for something like this, it's faster because of the bureaucracy around launching anything in the US. It's quite difficult. Irish malts just kind of service enough people. We also made a few bits and pieces available around here locally as well in our local village shop and our local off license called Falls, because they're great supporters of ours and we want to put stuff their way when we can as well. But 99.9% went to Irish malts.
So that launches tomorrow at 6 o'clock UK time. Is that my understanding?
So it's 2 p.m. EST. Right, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So I think that's 7 o'clock in the UK.
7 o'clock UK.
Yeah. Now a lot of the guys, there was a pre-sale to people who were involved who got picked to do the lock-in with us. So a lot of the stock is already gone, but we held back as much as we could for tomorrow. But there isn't a huge amount of it, I'm afraid.
And Louise was kind enough to delay that release until after she came on here, because if anybody of our audience wanted to get hold of it, that there would at least be the same opportunity to buy it as anybody else would have. But we wanted to make sure that we're not just coming on here talking about a sold out whiskey, because I don't know how great that would be.
Yeah, and we've had experiences in the past where we've launched something at like 9 o'clock Irish time, and then nobody in the US has been awake and it's been sold out in like an hour or something. And we're trying to avoid that. So 2 p.m. EST tomorrow on irishmalts.com, or you can come over to Corry and buy it in Vaughan's shop in the village. That's your other option. Quite frankly.
I don't believe Americans are very welcome in Ireland at the moment, as we probably shouldn't be. But so irishmalts.com is where you'll get hold of that tomorrow. I just want to, before we move on from this, I just want to briefly acknowledge how different the landscape is today. That Louise could do something like this today, or that she has done something like this, is so remarkable. When you think back 10 years ago, you didn't know who was behind your whiskey. You knew the brand names. If you were lucky, you maybe knew somebody working there, but you certainly didn't have access to the production unless you went perhaps on an up-close tour in one of the distilleries, one of the big distilleries. How remarkable is it and encouraging is it that today, not only do we know the people behind the whiskey, but now with a release like this, we can participate in its formulation. So we're now part of this journey that you've gone on with this release. And I hope it's an indicator of things to come across the industry. Like, it always takes one person to knock over the apple cart and people realize, okay, it's okay to knock it over, like nobody died. That's great. We can do that too. And it always takes one. So hopefully you're giving people a push and a prompt that this kind of thing is okay and possible, and it's better than okay.
Yeah, like I hope so. We plow our own furrow. You know, this is just kind of who I am and who we are as an organization. And I think when I started in the Irish, when I came home and set up the business, everybody thought I was a bit of a shocker. I think, like, just because I was very open about stuff. You know, I'm not into smoke and mirrors, and I think I've said this in the past, and a lot of people in the industry will agree with me. And it's not just Irish whiskey. I think Scotch has been guilty of this as well. We as an industry, I think, have painted this shroud of mystery around ourselves, and of, you know, we will tell you what's good and this is how you should drink it and this is how you shouldn't drink it. Like, I just don't think people operate like that anymore. You know, they just don't operate like that anymore. I, as a consumer, don't identify myself with things that I buy or consume in that way. And I don't think whiskey drinkers are any different. We lift the veil, we open the curtain. I just don't see any harm with it. There are no mad trade secrets anyway. Like I said, there's only one made awake whiskey. There's different kind of approaches to it, certainly. But I think as an industry, like, I feel this is how we should, like every other industry, like your food and all the rest of it, really this is how we should be communicating. But that's just my opinion. Not everybody has to do what I think is correct either. Like, some guys won't operate like that because they have a different mindset or whatever, and good luck to them, but I don't know, we're just authentic about what we do, and it's just the way it's in my DNA and our DNA, I think. So that's just who we are. But yeah, I think it'll change over time to some degree.
And there's two things I think you're doing that I want to showcase and hero and honor and pay respect to. Is the first is the transparency that other members of the audience have already highlighted before I did, which is great to see. There's no secrets coming in. I'll show you. I'll make you a cup of coffee in my kitchen that'll taste like tar because you make very thick coffee, but
very
it's good
thick coffee. That's real coffee, Barry.
You told me in advance, here's thick coffee. Do you want thick coffee or not? So transparency is the first thing. And the second thing is community. This, you could have decided to sit on the farm, get a very fast internet connection, and do all of your communicating or all of your dealings just through email and with distributors. But instead you decided to bring the community in, first of all, through your sharing on social media, but then by actually inviting people to participate and come and unload the forklift with you. It's those two things together should not be lost on any whiskey company in terms of their value to the consumer. Transparency and community. And so I think I want to hero that today and make sure that people recognize that this is not how Irish whiskey used to be, and hopefully it's how Irish whiskey will be, and we'll see more of it. We've got some great brands and distilleries doing amazing things, and I hope we see more like this. Tell us finally what's in the bottle then. So what exactly is the lock-in? Remind us again, what have we got in that bottle?
So it's 70% green, 30% malt. The malt is a 2006 malt, and then the green is kind of a combo of 4-year-old grain and 10-year-old grain. Cooley G&D grain, and then it'll be Schmelz malt, basically. So off the top of my head, I'll be frank, like I can't remember the exact percentages in blend number 3 because it's not on the back of the bottle, but that's kind of the core breakdown of it. It ended up being a lovely little drinker, that 06 malt is great. It has really good sort of depth of character and the fruitiness that you'd expect really from JJ Corry. And our grains, our younger grains that we have matured here on the farm have performed very well in terms of complexity and maturity. They're very young, but they don't taste it. They went through the first cask program, so they were very, very fresh, juicy, first fill ex-Jack Daniels and ex-Woodford Reserve casks mostly. Nice. So it shows really well. And then the 10-year-old grain has already kind of ginger kind of spices. A lot of people kind of got banana notes out of this. I call controversy on banana notes sometimes. Like I wasn't really aligned with that, but a lot of people got banana out of this particular blend. It's lovely. Pardon me?
Must be the color, the banana color.
Must be the color. Every bottle is signed by me. They're all numbered as well. We left room in the back to write in the blend if you want to do that. And it's a very personal note that's on this bottle. It doesn't really talk about the whiskey. It just talks about the time that we're in and how grateful we are. And this is to your point, this is a whiskey, I don't want to say by the people, for the people, that's a cliche, but this is an Irish whiskey community whiskey. This wouldn't have happened if we didn't have people out there who were engaged enough in Irish whiskey to work with us on this and to engage with us on it. We're a small business, we're one of the small indies getting out there trying to kind of do different things. And the community and us as a business and all the new indies are totally symbiotic. So we owe a debt of gratitude to the community for coming in and being engaged in what we're doing as new businesses as a whole, and us certainly at JJ Corry. And this for me is a real manifestation of that. So it's a very personal bottling for me, just because the times that are in it. And it's probably going to go down as one of my favorites ever. I would imagine when I'm on my retirement party or deathbed or whatever, like I'll never forget that. Like that meant a lot to me, and I think to everybody in the team as well. It was a real light during a very dark time, and it continues to be that light at the moment.
Well, congratulations on the launch of it. A remarkable process and approach to it, and making the most of the hand that was dealt you. I saw Ireland's national television station, RTE, was down because they heard the story too and wanted to cover it, which was great. Because this is something, it's community-based, like you said, and it is the Irish whiskey community, most of whom for this one were in Ireland and some perhaps overseas, but a remarkable bringing together of people who couldn't physically come together but came together online, which is great to see. So congratulations on that launch. For those of you who want to get hold of that, it's on irishmalts.com tomorrow. You put up that, let me see that URL again, irishmalts.com from 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 7 p.m. UK and Irish time tomorrow. So check it out if you're trying to get hold of that. Louise, will you stay with me for a moment, because I want to talk about another community thing. And I'd love you to stay on the line for it. A few weeks ago, I put this image up on our Facebook group, Irish Whiskey Fans of America. Should we do this? And it was accompanied with a question about whether we should try and bring together and celebrate and honor the community that we've been building up here in the United States around Irish whiskey, specifically around Stories and Sips and the Irish Whiskey Fans of America, the community that gathers here on a Friday night, the community that engages daily in the group, that listens to the podcast, that gets to know the people behind Irish whiskey, that friends them on Facebook. There's a remarkable community that's been building up around this because the quality of the whiskey is so good, because the people behind Irish whiskey are so great, and because I think we're all looking for connection at the moment. And so we posed this question to the group, and I think within about 2 hours, we had 200 people who said, yes, you should absolutely do something. And what is the thing that I asked, should we do? It's, should we bottle our own Irish whiskey? If we could get hold of an Irish whiskey that would be specific and special for the group, and if we could make it widely available in the United States, shipping to as many states as possible, 40 plus states, if we could do it before Christmas, if we could also do it in miniature bottles so that people who couldn't get hold of a full bottle could still get to taste it, should we try and get hold of our own whiskey? And of course, people said, yes, 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 you should absolutely do this. So a few good conversations later, that started to appear like it could become a reality. And I announced a few days ago that we would talk about something tonight on the live stream. That's why I'm wearing a jacket. I thought I should look fancy and smart tonight, because we're announcing special things. Tonight we're announcing that whiskey, the early stage of that. And so tonight we're introducing The Story, which is a collaboration between Stories and Sips, our Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group, and Louise at JJ Corry. We are absolutely thrilled that we're going to get to have a whiskey called The Story, because of the kindness and generosity and willingness of Louise to be part of our community and work with us on this. We're going to do something really special over the coming months. So Louise, I'm absolutely thrilled that you are the first bottling in history for Stories and Sips for the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group. It's an amazing moment for us. An amazing moment.
Yeah, it is going to be great. I tell you what I'm excited about. Like, I like the framing of this. It's called The Story. And what this is going to allow us to do is tell everybody the story of how we're going to make this whiskey and how we're going to get it to you, and the story behind the casks that it's going to come from, and the story behind the sort of matching of those flavors that we're going to be putting together. So I think there's a lot of meaning in that word. And I'm hoping that it'll mean a lot to you guys as we kind of go through this process to kind of, again, open the curtain to bring you in on this process in a way that maybe you haven't seen before. We're going to want you kind of as involved as we can get you, bearing in mind Irish, American licensing laws and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But hopefully this will be a really great opportunity for us here at JJ Corry to kind of do that, like get you involved in our story as much as possible, and give something back to you guys as, you know, the wonderful sort of Irish whiskey community that Barry and you guys are all building over there. So we're very excited. It's
an emotional moment that we can, a few years after starting this little journey of telling a few stories about Irish whiskey, we will have our name on a bottle, and no better brand for it to come from than JJ Corry.
Yeah, and it's going to be really good because I'm going to pull out all the stops on the stock as well. We were talking about this. So we have some pretty spectacular stocks here on site, and this for me is a very special bottling. It's a community effort more so than anything else as well. So the quality on this whiskey we're going to make, we always make really highly qualitative whiskey, but we don't tend to share our older reserves on all the, you know, on many things that we do. But I want to kind of pull some of the better stuff, the stuff that I love from the warehouse, to put it into this. So it's
this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I can't begin to share my excitement, not just that we'll have amazing whiskey in a bottle, but that between now and Christmas, we'll be sharing the story of a number of things. To me, when we thought about this name, I can't think without walking. I have to walk, and I'll walk anywhere. I'll walk around in a circle just to think. And I was trying to think, what is the name of this? What will this be called? Should we put this out to be voted on? What should it be? And it dawned on me that what has happened here over the past few years is that with Irish whiskey, with this group, this community that's built up, it's the story of a number of things. It's the story of Irish-American collaboration. It's the story of people making friends through Irish whiskey. It's the story of community. And it's the story of the components that go into that whiskey, the distilleries that whiskey came from, the process of what's going to go into taking it from a barrel, disgorging those barrels, blending, and eventually landing on this blend that showcases the best of what you can do and allows us to sample that, but have the story from now until Christmas of everything that's going to take place through video, through photographs. I mean, amazing, just amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be great. You know, it's a really exciting opportunity, I think. And we're really looking forward. It's a really big sort of project for us now for the next few months to sort of make it happen. Bear with us. There'll be stuff will go wrong along the way. It usually does. So bear with us. But we're going to go running 1 million miles an hour basically to make this kind of happen as soon as we can. And I think the key sort of thing, Barry, as well, is that we are going to do miniatures on this, which I think is really important. So we'll get it to as many people as we possibly can. And we've managed to figure out a route to a means of shipping to nearly every state. To make it kind of viable for the wider community. So let's just view it as like a community project. That's how I see this. Like, bring everybody along with us, and if you guys have suggestions and stuff like that, I would say fire them our way.
That's it.
Be part of this journey. Be as involved as you want to be. Nothing's off the table necessarily. Sorry, Barry, I'm digging a hole for us here. Nothing's off the table.
You're the one doing the work. I'm just going to sit back and watch the videos.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be really good. I'm excited for it.
There was a number of factors went into deciding we don't know what this looks like yet. Like, we don't actually know. I haven't tasted any samples. You haven't tasted samples. You've got great ideas of what's in the library there, of what you're going to draw from. And we have it now on video that you're going to draw from some older stock. So you're on record. So we've got it on camera here.
I'm doing that. No, we're going to do that. We're doing that. We're doing that. That's happening.
We wanted to make this available to as many states as possible was one of the criteria. That's not an easy thing, believe me. In the world of liquor in America, you'll see Larry Masoka there, his comment, delivery by Christmas 2020. Larry is part of this team that's going to help bring this to us. Yes, the goal was, can we get this into people's hands by Christmas? Could we make sure that we get a whiskey that's affordable? A whiskey that's available in miniature bottles as well as larger bottles, because I want as many people as possible to get into their hands. Can we do a live tasting when we get it? Can we get old stock as possible? The list went on and on. I had this pipe dream of all.
We just ticked everything. Yep. We just ticked it all.
Louise said, "Yeah, we'll do it all. We'll do it all." Yeah. And so we're going to create something spectacular here. Where at the moment we're working on design of the label, which we'll reveal every part of this along the way. There'll be no like mad reveal the day before launch. This is going to be, you'll all know and you'll follow along on the journey, which is exciting.
I think Larry's having a coronary there in the corner.
I know he is, yeah, because he's going to be important.
Yeah, it's going to be important. No, it's a very tight timeline. Everybody, make no bones about it. Like the logistics of doing that is very difficult. But as everybody in the JJ Corry team will tell you, we move very fast and we can make it happen. So yeah, I think watch this space in relation to that. But it's we're literally just about to start the. Bizarrely, we have to kind of start at the end. Like we have to get all of the certifications and sign-offs for the label is like literally one of the first things that we have to do as we're developing the blend in tandem. But this is going to be a core project for us in the next couple of months. So it's go, lock in speed, basically. And I have no doubt it'll be accomplished. If it's not, you'll never be allowed on the live stream again. Just know that that's hanging over you. That Fine. Threat remains active. Banned.
We've had questions, or I've been fielding questions all week as I've announced this. People wanted to know in advance, where's this whiskey coming from? Tell me more about it. How do I get hold of a bottle? I've had family members asking me, now will family be able to get some of this? And the answer to all of this is, we're going to try and figure this out. We're going to try and figure out how as many people can get hold of this. But this is not a general Jameson level of release. This is a small, we've been talking about 200 bottles plus, not much more than that at full size, plus miniatures. And the goal is right now to ship all of that to the US. We don't know yet if we'll hold some back for Ireland. That's all TBD. We don't know. We don't know.
No, we've no idea. But but the thing is, we will figure it out as we go.
We will.
I think a lot of this is going to be informed by what people say as well. You know,
that's right.
It's tough shipping whiskey around America. It just is very, very, very tough. But we have a partner in Larry who can kind of assist us in relation to that out of California. But there'll probably be some states right the second, I'm telling you, like Alabama, where this can't go. In theory, but we're gonna work within the regs and do our very, very best. But I guess the key point is like the story. This is the first page of the story. This is like the prologue, essentially.
It is.
That's what this is. It's the prologue where we're setting it up, and then there's going to be a lot of chapters that we're about to embark upon. It's going to be is it going to be a thriller? What do we think this is? Is it a thriller? Is it a mystery? Like it's a mystery.
Well, as long as it's not a comedy, we'll be all right.
We're avoiding comedy, okay? We're avoiding thriller. I think it's a thriller. It's a thriller.
There will be no humor, no fun in this whatsoever. It'll only be
there'll be no fun. It's not going to be funny this end. It'll be not. Well, there's no fun. It's a thriller, and there's a climactic sort of ending to it where and everybody ends up happy in the end. How about that?
That's a good ending. The goal is that by Christmas, before Christmas, like December, that this will be available from a retail partner in the United States. I'm working on some ideas for nice Christmas gift packs and things to go with it. We might even commission some new glassware and all kinds of ideas of how we can get more people involved. Look, this is a community effort. This is nothing more than how do we bring everyone together to have a lot of fun between now and Christmas. We tell the story of Irish whiskey. We tell the story of JJ Corry. And we buy some popcorn and we sit back and we watch the journey and enjoy the journey between now and then, because it's going to be tough on Louise and the team, but it's going to be a lot of fun watching every step of the way.
Yeah, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Keep turning the pages of the story. That's what I would say. It's going to be great. And we really want to hear from you, certainly our end. We want to hear from you, so put your suggestions out there and etc. Like it's a grand experiment. It's exciting. I'm excited that this is the first one that we're doing with you, Barry, certainly, and it's great. This is what we do, guys. We're whiskey bonders. We create small bespoke blends for kind of customers. This is our stock and trade, so we're excited to be doing it, and we want you as involved as we can get you, essentially. So let us know what you want.
over the next few days, you'll start seeing posts in the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group. There'll be questions going out there. You'll start to see some updates. You might even see some labels being teased around this name. We would love to have a much longer process where every step of the way is crowdsourced, but the reality is that we're under a bit of a time crunch to get things through the United States, the approval system with labels and shipping, etc. So some of this will move a little bit faster than we'd ideally like. So don't be discouraged if some of the things are already decided, but we do want contributions and buy-in. So we'll put some questions out there. And I know there'll be people who will say they'll want a 40-year-old single pot still whiskey for $40 a bottle.
Yeah, that's not happening.
This time. Not this time.
That's not happening. That's not happening. So that's the one thing I'd say is definitely not happening.
That's definitely not happening.
No, but we'll pull out. We'll bust out some of the 30-year-old kind of malty bits that we have and stuff like that, and I'm going to try to incorporate some of that mad stuff as well. So yeah, it's really good. But like, we don't have all of the pot still that we have is super. I'll be honest, all the pot still that we have is super young, and I wouldn't honestly. You need to. Yeah. Pot still needs a good bit of time, and we'll pull out the good stuff for this, but we need a bit of time on our pot still at the moment.
I'm beside myself with excitement. I've cleared a space in the house for the pallet that I'll be buying myself, so that I can always have bottles of the story on standby.
There's 600 bottles on a pallet, Barry. That's a lot of bottles.
All right, that's it. Nothing available for anybody else. I'll be drinking this alone for the next few years. Sorry.
No, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
So stay tuned, folks. The story coming by Christmas 2020. Louise, I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm privileged that you have allowed us to share and ride on the coattails of your brand name to release something unique and remarkable. And I know it's going to be a great showcase of what Irish whiskey is and can be, and what blending and bonding can be. And I know we're going to have a lot of fun. So everybody who's not part of the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group, please go and join. If you're not in there, you're dead to me. So you need to be in there and get. So you'll be able to ask questions and follow along this journey. We'll of course share it on Stories and Sips Facebook and our social media as well. But the group is where it all happens. That's where our community is building up. So yes. So that is it. Louise, thank you so much for joining tonight, for staying up late, for being part of this big reveal. We kept it a secret right until the last minute, and we pulled it off. And I'm so excited for what's coming next. Good luck with the lock-in tomorrow. I hope it sells out quickly, and that those who are thirsty and don't get hold of it can wait for the story when it comes before Christmas.
Yes, next up, the story. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you all for having me, guys. It's amazing to be over here in Ireland and watching your brilliant community grow over there. Really glad that we can be involved with it in some way. Stay safe, everybody, and thanks so much for listening. And we'll see you when we're talking about the story. We'll see you in the next chapter. You'll
see Louise in the group soon with some videos and some photos. Thanks, Louise, again, and we'll let you go to bed. Thanks a million for joining us.
Night, everybody. Night.
Night, Louise. Thank you. What more can we say? Eric and Louise and Niamh and Blaze and everybody in the team and JJ Corry, a massive thank you for the efforts that have gone to even getting us this far, and to Larry over here and the US side. There's a lot involved in making this happen. This is not as easy as the Irish system or the UK system or the European system. You're dealing with 50 different countries in America. You're dealing with approval processes. You're dealing with label approvals, size of bottle. Everything it's just a long process. Retailers, but we're going to get it done. We've been shaking the trees and trying to figure this out for a while, and I'm just beside myself with excitement. And time to pour a second whiskey, I think. Finished my gold rush there. I'm going to move on to some Tullamore Dew while I talk about and answer your questions about the story. But I think you're excited. I'm getting from this that you're excited, and I'm excited. That was worth putting on a coat in 85-degree weather for a fantastic announcement like that. Pour some Tullamore Dew in here. I'm taking off the jacket now. I'm not taking off the turtleneck though. There'll be nobody left on. So the story, everybody, it's the story of so much, isn't it? It's the story of what we've been doing here every Friday night, the story of Ireland, the story of whiskey, the story of friendship, the story of community coming together. Really, really excited for it. Maybe release number 2 will be called the turtleneck. Thanks for your suggestions on that. I think that might get lost on a lot of people, but maybe we'll do something turtleneck related, no doubt. We'll figure something out. Maybe one of the gift boxes will have one of those $1 million turtlenecks included in it. Whew. All right. I'm out of breath now, the excitement. Let me just lean back and take a sip here. Thanks, Joe, for the congratulations. Thanks to everybody for sharing your good wishes. I always say that I do the easiest work of all over here. I just open the bottles and talk about them. It's everybody in Ireland that is behind these brands and these whiskies that go into making it so great. And so I'm just lucky that people are open to working with us and to joining our community and being part of it. And I think we've got a remarkable opportunity to have a really great whiskey over the coming months. So really small quantity, 200 plus 250 bottles maybe that'll be released. And I know that there'll be interest from Ireland and the US. And I can't wait to share the journey, starting with the label. And then Louise is going to ship me some samples over the next couple of weeks, next 2 weeks, I think. And the samples are going to be those samples she's chosen from the whiskey library that she believes will make for a great component, for great component whiskeys in the blend. And we'll go back and forth and we'll talk about those, and we'll eventually, with Louise's counsel and guidance, land on a blend that is befitting the name, the story, and befitting this big story or this big show we've talked up here tonight that we now have to live up to. But I've no doubt when Louise starts talking about whiskey that has an age with a 3 at the beginning of it, and not just 3-year-old, but 30-year-old included, that's something remarkable indeed. Larry, who's going to be helping us get this done, says the backup name should be The Miracle. It should, because so much has to come together between Louise and Larry and a bunch of other folks to make this happen before Christmas. And I have the unique privilege of being able to sit back and watch this, and I'll get my hands as dirty as you need them to be, Larry and Louise, and to smooth this over. But it looks like all the hard work is going to be on you guys, but I think the whiskey is going to be a good reward at the end of this. Lots of volunteers there, Larry, as well in the comments for people who want to help. Brian asks if the baby-sized turtleneck should be called the Dickie. It's a great idea. I can talk a little bit about some of the grand ideas that we've had. I don't know if they're all going to make it in here. Just know that I'm pushing, and Louise is pushing, and Larry's pushing. Everyone's pushing for amazing things. Even, I mean, I've had conversations with Larry who suggested some amazing options for this, that everyone's pushing for the greatest thing possible here. But for me, it has to be affordable. I was in London last year with Louise for the launch of her €6,500, The Chosen, which is a remarkable whiskey, an aged 26-plus-year-old whiskey, slightly peated, a remarkable whiskey in a remarkable decanter, a beautiful cabinet that it arrived in. I don't think that's the price point we wanted to have in our group. And so I've pushed from day one that this has to be sub $100, below $100. That's already an expensive whiskey for so many of us. It can't be more than that. And so everything we do, if we get older stock in there, it's going to be because Louise is going to do that at her cost, and she's going to put this old, very valuable stock in there so that we can meet this goal of being sub $100. Now, even at sub $100, whether that's 89 or 99 or whatever it ends up being, that's still very, very expensive. I know that. And I know that for us in the Irish whiskey community, we forget sometimes that it wasn't so long ago that we laughed at the thought of spending $30 or $40 on a bottle of whiskey. And now that we're in the Irish whiskey world, we save up our money and we spend a little bit more. But there's many people who enjoy this journey, who enjoy Irish whiskey, that aren't spending that on a bottle. That's why we have to have bottles this size. We have to have miniature bottles, 50 milliliter bottles. Maybe it's this size. The 50 milliliter bottles available. So my goal with those is that we can, in an ideal world, we get these little miniature bottles into sleeves, into little tubes, and they'll be a really nice presentation on their own. We'll also have opportunities, I think, combinations with glassware, and we might do a special release of the Story glasses to go with this as well. So we'll pull out all the stops. there's nobody making any money on this. It's not the goal of it. It's rather, how do we get a story going? How do we chat? And how do we do something really special and really spectacular? Jeff asks, curious as to why you don't go for a bigger release. It's a good question, Jeff. This is a risk. Maureen has, she asked me in the comments here, did you ever think a year ago that you'd be here now announcing this? No, I didn't. And look, I don't begin to think that we here could sell out 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 bottles. I don't know. I'd rather we did something really special and we sold out because everybody wanted it and people were left wanting more, which means that we'll do it again. And if we can build up an interest in this, we'll do more of them. And maybe we increase the size of them in the future if Louise and other distillers who we may have the pleasure of working with in the future are open to it. So right now it's going to be a smaller release. And another thing I want this to be, I don't really have any control over this, is I want this to be a drinking whiskey. And I know that many whiskeys are sought after, and the JJ Corry lineup of whiskeys are much sought after, and they're regularly found on auction sites, and people are trying to create their full collection of JJ Corry of every release. And I want people to open the bottles. I want people to drink them. And I want people to enjoy them. I want people to join our live tasting and open their bottles live on the air. And we all open our bottles together and we drink these things. So that's another thing I wanted this, but I have no control over that. I think people will come in and maybe who are collectors as well. But we'll do our best. We'll probably, I don't know. I honestly don't know anything about how this is all going to work in terms of, do we get people to pre-register? Do we get people to express interest? I'll probably get you all to sign up for an email list so that you can be kept up to date on it as well. So we'll do something spectacular with it. We'll knock it out of the park and we'll get into as many people's hands as possible. We'll hopefully have hundreds of miniatures. So even if you don't get hold of the main bottle, which the shape of the bottle will be like this, but I can hint already that the label will be closer to the Lock-in label, which comes at an angle. It won't be like this, but that'll be the bottle style, as you see here. And the miniatures will be something different. Brian says, we know it'll be high quality and a great story. The liquid, the whiskey that Louise has is amazing quality. And we're going to milk this for every bit of story that we can. We're going to tell every angle of this story on every live stream, on every podcast, and we're going to enjoy this journey. And you're going to get to ask questions all along the way, which is fantastic. Richard says, Dunville's special release sold out in 6 minutes during the Belfast Whiskey Week. You bet this will be in the same range. Woo! I hope I get hold of some. That's the, I hope I do. Bruce asks, what about a prepay? Lots of options for us. The founding storytellers. Yes, you all have a chance to be part of the founding storytellers. I love that. That's a great idea. Johnny says, if he opens this before Christmas Eve, it'll surely be gone before New Year's Eve. JJ says, congratulations to Barry and Mrs. Stories and Sips and team. We'll give her a wave over there. Marshall says, my popping a cork and jabbering has definitely benefited. Well, look, it's not much effort on my part to pop a cork and jabber. The story will be as long as War and Peace. I'm trying to go for a longer story, Martin, if I can. Maybe 3 volumes. We'll absolutely milk it. So look, that's the story. Stay tuned. It's coming. We're working on it. I'm on to whiskey number 2, like I mentioned. We'll talk about this. Tullamore Dew. We had Donna Stewart, Californian brand ambassador, on with us a few weeks ago. We'll have to have her back. She was great crack, great fun. I think we sipped on Tullamore Dew original that night. Triple distilled Irish whiskey blend. Contains the 3 styles of Irish whiskey: malt, grain, and pot still. New distillery being built, or has been built, outside the town of Tullamore. Why I'm sipping this tonight is that I had the absolute pleasure, the privilege of sitting down for a couple of hours this week with John Quinn. And John Quinn is the global brand ambassador for Tullamore Dew. And John Quinn has been working with Tullamore Dew for 46 years, initially through Irish Distillers, when it was part of Irish Distillers, and in every ownership change of the Tullamore Dew brand, John Quinn has been part of that. John Quinn was part of the team, and in some cases single-handedly opening up export markets around the world for Tullamore Dew, back before there was any such thing as an internet and an online opportunity for people to learn about Irish whiskey. John was pounding the pavement a legend of Irish whiskey, let me tell you, an icon of Irish whiskey, and a whiskey magazine Hall of Fame recipient, the only Irish global brand ambassador to ever be inducted. What John doesn't know about whiskey and Irish whiskey is not worth knowing, and he's a gentleman and a kind soul, and he spent an afternoon talking with me about his journey and about the early days of Irish whiskey. When he started, he joined the company in 1974. I'm going to give away the whole podcast now before I release it, but he started in 1974, and what a remarkable time that was. That was just after the formation of Irish distillers, when Powers and Jameson and Cork Distilleries Company came together, and the new distillery in Middleton was still a year away from opening. 1975 came online fully. So John joined right at the resurgence of the new renaissance of Irish whiskey. Now, it would have been tough times in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, but John Quinn was there, and you're going to have to listen to the podcast. I can't give it all away. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And I'll be sharing that this week. I was hoping, or Tuesday, I'm going to get it out on Tuesday. I hope to get it out this week, but you'd think I'd have more time when we're all locked down, but sure, I work for a living as well, and sometimes that takes me away from whiskey, and it did this week. But I'll get that podcast released this week. So I'm drinking Tullamore Dew in honor of the chat. So cheers to John Quinn. Cheers to Donna up there in Newport Beach and Southern California. So we're going to, that'll be a good episode. Juan asks, is it true that they sold the brand to Powers in 1954? Yeah, so the Tullamore distillery closed its doors, 1954, early 1950s. They closed their gates for the last time. Distilling ceased, and the distillery in Tullamore, and through marriage, Tullamore, the Daly family and Tullamore were connected to the Powers family, and to the family that were running the Powers, who led the Powers brand at the time. So through marriage, they were connected. And so when the distillery closed its doors, the Tullamore brand was absorbed into John's Lane in Dublin, the Powers John's Lane distillery. And it was distilled there for many years. It was distilled there in the 1960s and the early 1970s. So when John Quinn joined Irish Distillers in 1974, they had they were just closing the doors of Powers in John's Lane in Dublin, and they were moving production down to Middleton. So really interesting to look back to the last 60 years of Irish whiskey and to see the intersections of the various brands and how they all at one point were in one family. Like at one point, Paddy, Bushmills, Tullamore, Jameson, Powers, Redbreast, Greens, they were all one single company. It's hard to believe that was one umbrella company now when you look back at it, but they were. And so it was an interesting time. So we talk a lot about that history, those early days, and the transition from whiskey as a formulation in Dublin as a pot still whiskey, like the Powers, the Jamesons, even the Paddy, those were pot still whiskeys in the 60s, 50s, 40s. And then they became blends in the 70s. John tells a good story about that transition. So that'll be coming this week. Steve liked the Bushmills podcast. So yes, we had a great chat with Jack Ferris, the national brand ambassador for the United States for Bushmills last week. So we're getting some good conversations. I've got 3 or 4 really interesting people lined up for conversations over the next few weeks as well. Those who are working directly in the production side of whiskey and those who are on the enthusiast side of Irish whiskey as well. But Tullamore Dew is a great brand. When I was younger in Ireland, this was exported more than it was sold in Ireland. It was rare to see Tullamore Dew in Cork, I'll tell you that. And it was a bit like it was rare to see Powers over here in the United States, because it was at the time when Powers and Tullamore Dew were under the same umbrella. Powers tended to be a domestic product and Tullamore tended to be an export product. And so Tullamore wasn't as consumed in Ireland and Powers wasn't as consumed in the United States. Now you've got both these sitting on shelves in Ireland and the United States and battling for space against one another. But a lovely sipping whiskey. I'm a big fan of Tullamore Dew Original. Dara has his bottle of the Paddy Centenary stashed away in Ireland, the belter of a whiskey. Yeah, that's an amazing whiskey that came out in 2013 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Paddy O'Flaherty. Was it him retiring, I think, in 1912, 1913. So let me know what you're drinking, what questions you have, any questions on this whiskey, on Tullamore Dew, on JJ Corry, the Gold Rush, on the story that's coming soon, the Stories and Sips, the story, and then I'm going to be moving on to Bua next, an Ohio-Ireland collaboration there that I'm going to be sipping on next once I finish sipping on my Tullamore Dew. Brian, thanks for joining in. Glad you were part of it. And for those of you who've had to drop off, I completely understand. Thanks for being part of the lock-in so far. Oh yeah, Tullamore Dew is a lovely drop indeed. So tell me, remind me where you are now and what you're drinking, what's in your glass. I'm always fascinated by what you pull out of the cupboards on a Friday night to pour into your glasses. Johnny McNally's onto the Black Barrel. That's the whiskey that got me really into Irish whiskey 4 or 5 years ago, Johnny. Black Barrel. That was my go-to until somebody had the decency to introduce me to Redbreast, and then Black Barrel took a back seat for a while, but I go back and forth. Those two whiskies, actually, Black Barrel and Redbreast, are my favorite for making cocktails, old fashions. I can sip on those all day long. William says he's not leaving. We're stuck with him. William, a great fan of Irish whiskey, did a tasting last night from his home bar, talking about Irish whiskey up in Nevada. William, a great fan and a great supporter of Ireland, great supporter of Irish whiskey. I met him at Whiskey Live last year in Dublin, and hopefully we're going to have more of those in-person meetings when the world allows it to happen. And I know it's terrible news in different quarters, and so many businesses are suffering, and so many bartenders and individuals are struggling at the moment. So, I raise my glass to you wherever you are, to your health, to your sanity, to your survival throughout all this. We're dealing with very tough times, and I don't take it lightly. And if there's anything we can ever do, this is a good community here, and I think feel free to lean on it. And as I mentioned earlier, we have one of our own in hospital at the moment in rehab, recovering from a stroke. So we raise a glass to him as well. Say, Sláinte, get well. We're counting on you coming back, and we'll meet you at Whiskey Live in 2021. Steve's enjoy the Tully cider cask. 3 swallows, gone. Now it's time for Bushmill 16. That's some night you have there, Steve. Dearman's in Hillsborough, New Jersey, drinking Redbreast Listowel. So again, we'll talk about the community here a little bit. I have been doing my podcast for a couple of years now, and talking on social media about my favorite whiskies and sharing pictures. And then somebody started watching some of my podcasts and listening to them and watching my videos. His name is Kieran Quinn. And Kieran reached out to me. We started chatting over direct message about Redbreast, and he was a big fan of Redbreast. And then he asked, would you ever do a tasting for my company? We'll do it virtually. I said, I will. So we started doing tastings for his company. Now we're doing a few of them a week for his clients all over the world. And he started introducing more people like Diarmid to Irish whiskey. And now Diarmid's got in touch, and we've had some conversations as well. And this community grows and grows and grows. So if anybody, let's make this community feel like it's even smaller, in the sense of we're all only a couple of messages or connections away from one another. So feel free to lean on one another, reach out, ask for help, ask questions. I get lots of messages every day asking about different whiskies, or have got information about this, that, or the other thing, or can I put somebody in touch with somebody else? And that's what the community is all about. And if we can help, we'll help. So great to see Diarmid there now, who was introduced to Redbreast Listowel through Kieran and perhaps through some of these tastings. He's now a huge fan, and that's how it happens. I believe that Irish whiskey is experiential. It's about trying it with friends, listening, talking, sharing the crack and sharing the chat, telling the story, if you will, and maybe having a sip. See? I wedged in the stories and sips there. Mrs. Stories and Sips very impressed with that. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Johnny says, remember to tip your bartender well when you're able. Absolutely, Johnny. Absolutely. Joe has a good question here. If you had to do up your dream casks or a wish list, what casks would you like to see involved in the story? Interesting. So I know that Louise has great stock, great casks from the likes of Bushmills and Cooley and Great Northern Distillery and a few other places. I suppose there's two answers there, Joe, whether it's just what Louise has or whether it's, if you could go further afield, I love old aged Bushmills stock, and I'm absolutely thrilled that Louise has some of that and she's willing to tap into it for us. So that is a no-brainer. One of my top 3 whiskies of all time is Bushmills 21-year-old. So if she's got 30-year-old Bushmills, I'm dancing already. I'm dancing that's going to go in there. So to me, my dream casks are old single malt, aged 20+ year single malt. And to me, if we're doing a story, then the story has to be a blend, because it's for a couple of reasons. One is there are more stories when there are more components. There are more opportunities to introduce it to a wider audience. And if we think back to the 1970s, when the heavier style of whiskey, the pot still whiskey, died out and fell out of favor, it was because the younger, lighter, more floral blends were being favored. The lighter Scotch blends were being flavored. And so Irish whiskey decided to pivot and adapt. And so it opened it up to a wider audience. So I think an ideal blend, an ideal cask or bottling includes a grain, a nicely finished grain, a well casked, a good story of both the cask and the grain, and then a really old malt. Maybe down the line, a single pot still, single cask would be amazing. And I know that those things are hard to come by, because the only place making single pot still whiskey of an age that I would like to bottle is the Middleton Distillery. And the Middleton Distillery, of course, has been making pot still for, well, really, they've been making pot still whiskey since 1825, haven't they? But they've been making it in the new Middleton Distillery since 1975. But they were the only ones laying down pot still whiskey. So that's the reason why we have Redbreast 27-year-old, or we have even Redbreast 21 has 25, 26, 28-year-old whiskey in there, doesn't it? Because of the Middleton Distillery. But those casks are phenomenally expensive, as you'd imagine that they would be, and they should be, because they're fantastic products. So at some point, I'd love to have a single pot still, single cask for maybe chapter 2 of the story. Who knows? But if chapter 1 sells out, don't we get a lovely template to start planning what chapter 2 will look like? And maybe by that stage, Louise has older pot still stock as well. Who knows? So that's, yeah, it's a tough one, Joe. What about yourself? Tell me what you think. What would be your ideal dream casks or wish list that would go into it? Dan asks, what's my go-to for people who want to taste Irish whiskey for the first time? It's hard to beat introducing people to James, like to Irish whiskey through Jameson, Dan, honestly. It's a perfectly approachable whiskey, and it's what it has become. It is the known name almost for Irish whiskey throughout the world. Look, it's the best-selling Irish whiskey by a factor of 7 or 8 at this stage, and there's a reason for that. It's a great whiskey. I'd introduce people to that and help them understand the components of it. And what I'd probably do is talk to them about the 2 styles of whiskey and the 2 types of barrels that are used in Jameson, and help them understand what pot still is and what a grain whiskey is, the maize corn component is. And I'd talk to them about bourbon barrels, I'd talk to them about sherry barrels, and perhaps from there we could branch out into something that is more of a focus on one of those 4 components: sherry barrels, bourbon barrels, grain, or pot still. So maybe we try a pot still whiskey next, or maybe we try a single grain whiskey, or we try a bourbon, something with a heavy bourbon influence, like perhaps a Jameson Black Barrel or a Redbreast 15-year-old. And then something with a sherry component like Diarmaid's trying tonight, a Redbreast Listowel. So I think if you have the chance to start with something like a Jameson or even a Tullamore Dew, I mean, you've got the 3 styles in here, Paddy Irish whiskey, the same. 3 styles of whiskey in it, a great way to introduce people. If you told me for the rest of my life I could only drink Jameson or Tullamore Dew or Bushmills, be perfectly happy. They're fantastic whiskies, and we're privileged to have them, and we're even more privileged that we get to drink whiskies up the chain then, older, mature stock as well. Martin has a varied night: red velvet, Teeling small batch, and finishing with a John's Lane. That is a good night. A good night. Richard says Bushmills 28-year-old on the way. Yes, there are some single malts. So if you listened to my interview with Jack Ferris last week, the national brand ambassador for Bushmills, I mentioned how I was driving down the highway here in Southern California last week, just 2 days before our interview. There was a big sign on the side of the road. It was a Bushmills sign. And it surprised me because I've not seen a Bushmills sign in America ever. And to see it 5 minutes from my house, I asked him, had he taken out an ad buy on the on the billboards because of our podcast? He said he hadn't, but what they're doing is they're advertising. There's a new campaign talking about Bushmills that, I mean, I'll call it a controversial campaign because it says before bourbon, before, what does it say? Before bourbon, before Kentucky, before bourbon, before America, there was Bushmills. And it's playing on the fact that they've got 1608 on the bottom of every bottle that year that a license was granted to a distillery in the vicinity, let's say, that Bushmills has adopted. And so there's a big campaign now about their aged, about how they've been the original Irish whiskey. We'll debate that all day long. I don't care whether it's them, Kilbeggan, it doesn't matter. They're good stories, and we get to entertain each other with them and debate and discuss them. They are going to pivot and they're going to launch off that campaign into their high-end single malt. So a big focus for Bushmills now over the coming year or two is single malt, aged, exclusive single malts. And my understanding is that there are a limited number of 28-year-old bottlings coming to the United States, as few as 800 bottles, but maybe more, in this first release. Really excited to see what's coming, and I will move heaven and earth to try and get hold of a bottle for us here, because Mrs. Stories and Sips' favourite whiskey is, our non-peated whiskey is Bushmills 21 as well, so we'll try and get hold of that. That'd be very exciting, really exciting. Belfast Whiskey Week fell asleep, which is great to hear that he needs. I'd say, Paul, you need sleep after the week you had. Belfast Whiskey Week was a great success, and I chatted with Paul on the phone during the week and congratulated him on having pulled off a remarkable festival online. We're going to see more from Paul, and hopefully we get to do more things together. So hope you had a good sleep there, Paul. Maybe go back to sleep. You missed the main bits, so watch from the start tomorrow. Brian says he hasn't yet gone into Bushmills, but you have me interested in that 21. Brian, the 21-year-old is after I move on to my fourth whiskey of the night will be Bushmills 21. That's decided. But before we do that, I'm going to move on to Bua as we talk. If you have not encountered the lovely Bua Irish whiskey, I encourage you to do so. It is a collaboration between former Tullamore Dew brand ambassador Martin Kennedy and Pat Byrne and his family, the Byrne family from the famous Irish Burns pub in Grandview, Columbus, Ohio. And they have released their whiskey, which is sourced from Great Northern Distillery, triple distilled, non-chill filtered, and it is a unique 5-barrel maturation, which kind of sets this apart. Aged in bourbon, freshly charred oak casks, tawny port, white muscatel grape, former white muscatel barrels, and sherry. A pale color that should not put you off what is in this bottle, because the flavor of this is maybe a sweetness and a fruit level that I've not experienced before, and I'm delighted that I get to try something so summery and fruity and a beautiful nose to it. This combination of it screams out. I always, for those of you who followed along some of these tastings that I do online, I always talk about whiskies in colors. For some reason, I see whiskies in colors. And to me, this is a white and a green whiskey. It's that summer greens, summer whites, white crisp grapes, muscatel. I mean, it's a crisp nose to it, which is really, really beautiful on the nose. It's a younger whiskey, and it gives this lovely balance, I find, of hints of the new make, that those beautiful barley tones from that new make coming through on the mouth, on the palate. Take another little sip for good measure. Vanilla, melon. It's light. It's medium finish. It's just a lovely sipping whiskey. It's just really nice. What I haven't done yet, and I intend to do, and Martin Kennedy, if you are watching, stay tuned, because I'm experimenting with some cocktails, Irish whiskey cocktails at the moment. I've been building up my collection of bitters and ingredients and mixers. And so Bua, I've got some ideas for Bua. We're going to find some ways to use this in cocktails. No coloring, no chill filtering. transparency. Look back through go to storiesandsips.com and you'll see Martin who's come on our live stream to talk about this. He's come on the Lock-in in the past. Big fan of what they're doing, and we'll give them my support. So this is Bua. So sláinte to Martin and Pat, and hopefully Ohio opens up again soon. Brian talking about his Bushmills 21. Seek it out, Brian. It's not a cheap whiskey. You'll pay north of $200 a bottle for the 21-year-old. I was lucky enough to find two at $130 or $140 recently, and I snapped them up very quickly. They were dusty on a shelf. Of course, the good news is that they can be as dusty as they want. The whiskey inside won't be going off. They were stored out of the sunlight from what I could see, and so I can confirm they taste beautiful. So yeah, get hold of Bushmills 21. I can't wait to try Bushmills 28. God only knows what that's going to be like. I think there's a cognac finish on that as well, which will be really interesting. Mrs. Stories and Sips is looking over to me with interest, trying to, what are you eating her? She's munching on a carrot over there, and she's wondering if I can hear the crunches across the room of her munching on a carrot. So there's your visual now. There's the production team of Stories and Sips is me in front, and Mrs. Stories and Sips in the corner there munching on a carrot, like an old rabbit in the corner. As long as you're happy. Tim Hurley, former Tullamore Jew man himself, sipping along to join us. Good man, Tim. Andrew says many different flavors, but Bua is a good sipper. I think you meant there. It is indeed a good sipper. Funnily enough, I found it in California probably 2 weeks after Martin had launched Bua. It was on the shelf of, what's the name of that place around the corner? Forgotten it now. The Whiskey Room. No, Whiskey House. Yes, the Whiskey House in San Diego. And what they'd done is they'd bought it from Ireland, from Celtic Whiskey Shop, shipped it over to the United States, stuck it on their menu. It wasn't cheap, but at least they had it, which was remarkable. Richard says the Bushmills 21 is $160 a bottle. That's great value. Sadly, Bushmills 21, being a single malt, is subject to tariffs that have been imposed on single malt whiskies from Europe. I'd love to see those go away, and hopefully such savings could be passed along to the consumer, and it would allow for more sales. But yeah, for the stock that found its way to America before the tariffs, you'll probably find that cheaper. There's Martin now. He's 100% on board with this. Can he wear his turtleneck? Martin's a great fan of Irish whiskey, having been involved in it for so many years, and great to see him taking a risk and a gamble in releasing a whiskey like Bua. So I'm always keen for everyone to support independent brands and labels like that. And with us releasing the story, there is no competition. Let me assure anybody, it is a completely independent. Just, we are going to do this to celebrate Irish whiskey, but it does not in any way mean we are not going to be heroing, supporting, and raising a glass and featuring any other Irish whiskey brands. We're trying to be additive to the conversation, not subtractive. So rest assured, over the coming weeks, I'll be reaching out to all of the Irish whiskey producers and brands with ways and ideas that I've come up with to support them in these tough times. And there's things that we can do for them through our podcast and our live stream and through events that we can create. So I'm hoping that our community gets access to some unique events and experiences. And I'll give you an example of one of the things we're trying to do. In 2 weeks' time, August 21st, we're going to do a live stream takeover with Kilbeggan. And Kilbeggan we're going to try and do a few fun things. I can't give away too many secrets. And we're also working on, but it'll be a different experience than what we're used to here, which will be good, because a bit of variety never hurts. And then we're working on something around September 18th. September 18th is approximately halfway to St. Patrick's Day. September 17th is halfway. And September 18th, or halfway to St. Patrick's Day, tends to be celebrated in America. I had no idea this was a thing when I lived in Ireland, but halfway to St. Patrick's Day is a great excuse for an old jar, an old drink. So we're going to do something fun for that, which may involve some remote broadcasts or having remote broadcasts dial in. Stay tuned. We may be going around America that night. We may. If any of you are on from a whiskey brand and you want to do some fun things to get out there and be part of this community and do some fun experiences, just give me a shout, because we're going to plan some things and we're going to do some fun things over the coming weeks and months. All right, Chris found Bua near Toledo, Ohio. Good stuff. Peter, thanks for joining. 10 to 2 in Ireland. He's off to bed. Good man yourself, Peter. Thanks for joining in with us. FG on YouTube has been to Jameson, Tullamore and Teeling distilleries. All are very educational and fun. What's my favorite distillery to visit? That's a good one. My favorite distillery, I have not, so there are 33 distilleries in Ireland now. I think I've only visited 15, maybe 15, not even. I don't think I've visited 15, 12 of them, I think. My favorite, I have two favorites at completely different ends of the production spectrum. One is Middleton in County Cork, because it's hallowed ground. It is where we go and we genuflect and we do the sign of the cross before we go in there, because it is a special place, a holy place for whiskey. Middleton is a special place. When I was younger, my dad would take me around the grounds of the distillery and take me on the tour, and we'd walk around there. So I've got some kind of emotional ties. I grew up 12 miles from there. My dad lives in Youghal in County Cork, just 10, 15 minutes from Middleton. It's a special place for more than just the whiskey to me. And there's also the remarkable stories of the people and the places of Middleton. The other distillery that holds a special place in my heart is Dingle, for a number of reasons. Dingle is a special place just because it's Dingle. If you've ever been to Dingle in the southwest of Ireland, on the western seaboard, most westerly distillery in Europe, you'll know what Dingle's all about. It is a special place, a unique town, a unique community, a welcoming place. And before I was even into whiskey, I was into the Dingle distillery. And I was visiting there and tasting the gin, and I drank Dingle gin before I ever sampled Dingle whiskey or knew anything about Irish whiskey, really. So going back to 2013, 2014, I'd be visiting the distillery. Mrs. Stories and Sips had a fantastic trip there in our early courting days to Dingle, and we absolutely loved it. And so they are on opposite ends of the spectrum, but you'll understand Dingle. You have to go there to understand it. You look at the Dingle distillery from the outside, and it looks like a corrugated tin shed, and they won't mind me saying that, because they know what they've got inside is very special. And I encourage you to seek out the Dingle distillery. Juan says Dingle is probably the best place in Ireland, together with Donegal. Dara likes the Irish Whiskey Museum for the independent overview. Yep, Irish Whiskey Museum does a great job of giving an overview of all the whiskies. John has visited 17 distilleries. Good man, John. Clonakilty and Dingle for one. Let me see. Jeff is celebrating Bua, congratulating Bua. No colouring in it. Wish more brands would embrace that. And then Andrew has a question for me on Bua. Does my bottle of Bua have a Y or an I on the serial? This is batch number Y001. And he wants me to ask Martin for that story. All right, Martin, give us the story of whether this is what the significance of Y or I is on that. William Grass enjoyed the West Cork distillery. Would you believe I have not been to the West Cork distillery? And I have a cask of whiskey maturing in the West Cork distillery, a cask of pot still whiskey of my own in the distillery, and I've never even set foot down there in Skibbereen, and it's on my list. So when the world opens up again, I'll be going over to rub the side of the cask and give it a sniff, and maybe an old kiss. Joe asked me earlier what my ideal contributions would be to the story in terms of cask selections, and I shared with him, and I asked him what his would be. And Joe is a great man for the whiskey, a great ambassador for Irish whiskey. He mans the fort up there in Dublin Airport, the Loop in Dublin Airport, and his thoughts are, because it's going to be a small batch, I think I'd be going for unique and different, a little bit of experimentation, particularly with the finish, something like Amontillado Sherry or Fino Sherry, or perhaps some inspiration from Green Spot, Chateau Leoville Barton, an aged 15-year-old blend finished off in a red wine Bordeaux cask or maybe a Burgundy. Good man, Joe. I like where your head's at. That's really interesting. I'm going to keep that note, because I'm going to ask others the same question, Joe. You ask a great question. What's the ideal cask contribution look like? Maybe we can come up with something that is particularly special and unique from the suggestions. That's a great one. Juan, if I asks if I have more casks, I've got one. 1 cask of whiskey. Maybe I'll have more in the future. Yeah, like I'm a whiskey drinker. I don't collect a lot of whiskey. I have some nice bottles that I just keep on the side that at some point will probably be opened. But beyond that, I like to drink it. And so the danger is if I have too much on hand, sure, I'm never going to be able to drink it. The investment of a cask in West Cork was for no other reason than to be part of a journey of whiskey and to maybe go and visit it and understand its journey and eventually bottle it up. And perhaps, I mean, maybe that becomes a bottling for our group at some point. Who knows what we'll do with it? But it was just out of curiosity. I wanted to be part of a journey of a cask. And so last year I managed to get hold of one in West Cork, single pot still. So I have no plans of bottling that short of 8 or 10 years. So that'll sit there for a while until I have much more grey hair than I have today. That wouldn't take much, I'd say. Jeff, who is a great fan of Irish whiskey, goes from America regularly to Ireland. In 19, he visited Boyan, Slane, Powerscourt, Royal Oak, Waterford, Middleton, Clonakilty, West Cork, Dingle. They hit them all. Amazing. Out of that list there now, Jeff, I haven't been to Boyan, I haven't been to Slane or Powerscourt or Royal Oak. I've been to Waterford, Middleton, Clonakilty, Dingle, Dublin Liberties, Teeling, Pierce Lyons, Rowan Co and Bow Street. I've not been to Tullamore or Kilbeggan either, believe it or not. I've driven past them at speed limit. Johnny says, how about a Stories and Sips cask? Yeah, I've thought about that as well as an option for us, whether we all go in on a cask together or a number of casks, and whether we could create a little cask program where we buy into a cask or a number of casks on a fractional basis, and we would each then get what comes out of that cask at the end. There's pros and cons to that, and I've explored it from a legal perspective. There's not a big issue or legal barrier to creating a company or a collective or a cooperative that buys the cask. The challenge comes with getting that whiskey back to the United States or doing anything with it in Ireland because of laws governing importation and excise that has to be paid, etc., etc. So it is a bit of a minefield of bringing whiskey in as an individual. Companies pay importers and pay a lot of money to figure that bit out. If there's interest, I mean, let me know. If you think there'd be interest in a fractional cask or number of casks, we could buy a selection of casks. And we've got some contacts who've shared, distillery contacts who've shared interest in letting us be part of their cask program. So Johnny, let me know if that's of interest. We might look into it. Donna Stewart, oh my God, Barry, let's get you to Tullamore. We'll have to go to Tullamore. Next time we're back, we'll go to Tullamore. John Quinn invited me up as well. He said, you'll have to do an overnight in Tullamore and we'll go out in the Lash in the town of Tullamore. So Donna, that's an event there you'll have to come over for. Definitely have to get up there. Definitely. Okay, JJ wants to know, what's the song to go with the story? Well, that's a great question. Do you know what we should do now? We should commission a song to be written for the story and have someone play it at the launch, online launch. That's what we're going to do. JJ, it's a great idea. We're going to have somebody write a song and sing it or play it for us to go with the story. It'll have its own backing track, its own music. That's a great idea. What do you think of that, Mrs. Stories and Sips? She's got all her headphones in. What do you think about the idea of commissioning a song to go with the story? Yeah. We'll have somebody write a song and sing it or play it or do something with it. That'd be a great idea. Okay, we'll do that. That's on the list. All right, Donna's in for Tullamore. Great stuff. The Owl Triangle, Mark says we should sing. When Irish eyes are smiling. California Dramin. There's one now from Larry. California Dramin. Andrew says Bua, I or Y, that I equals Irish distribution and Y equals American distribution or Yanks. So this is for the Yanks. There we go. I got my Yankee bottle. Raised on Sips and Stories, says Andrew. What about Raised on Stories and Sips? William has just the man. Roy Buckley. All right, give me the suggestions. Connect me, William. We'll talk about it. Maybe we'll crowdsource the singer and the songwriter from our group, and we'll have a song to go with it. And maybe we'll create a section of the website on storiesandsips.com where you can get all the details of the whiskey, where you can play the song. Oh, geez, we'll go big now. It's all happening now. It's all happening. Oh, Roy Buckley's in. That didn't take long. No sooner is somebody's name mentioned than they appear in the comments. This community gets bigger by the day. Rebecca recommends we should ask an Irish-American band to do the song, or an Irishman in America band. That's a great idea. I think that's part of the, yeah, we should definitely do that. Joe wonders if Ed Sheeran is busy. He might be. Maybe Taylor Swift or something. We'll get that done. That's a great idea. JJ, you came up with that idea there now, or you inspired the idea. A song is needed, and then we'll all learn it and sing it. Really enjoying Bua. For those of you who haven't got hold of it, lovely, lovely sipping drop. Lovely, lovely drop indeed. Dara says, give us a shout when you're in Westmeath and we'll have you sorted in Kilbeggan. Great stuff. Great stuff. And Richard wondering if U2 is available. We're not making any money in this whiskey, are we? We'll knock this out of the park. So when Waterford Distillery launched their inaugural releases, I don't know if you've seen this, but on the label of every bottle of Waterford whiskey, there's a code. So just like you'll see a barcode on Bua here, there's a little, I think it's like a 6-digit code. And you can take this code and you plug it into the website. And on the Waterford whiskey website, you'll find pages and pages and pages of data related to the whiskey, including the type of, the obvious things like the type of cask, the number of days it matured for, etc. But then it gets mad. It goes crazy. Like it gets into maniacal territory in the best way, because it starts to list things like show pictures of the soil type. And then there's even a recording, a sound cloud that you can press play, and it's the sound of the field that the barley came from. So they have gone out to the field with a microphone, not unlike this, and they have just pressed record, and they've recorded the sound of the wind going through the fields and the sound of the ocean if the field is near the ocean. And that is all captured on the page of each individual whiskey. Isn't that amazing? So what if we could do something similar? We'll put the whole story of the story on storiesandsips.com, and it'll be recorded there forever. So this journey, we'll make a little documentary out of it. We'll do a little documentary. That's what we'll do. And we'll record this story. So that's exciting. Songs, sounds, the whole lot. Maureen says, speaking of songs, Barry, listen, you can't be coming in here for a song. You come in here for the whiskey. Roy says, what are you looking for? A new song, is it? Raised on Songs and Stories, the first line of Dublin in the Rare Old Times. It is. We were thinking raised on stories and sips. Raised on sips and stories. So we can't steal that. We can't steal that song. Steve's onto a second Bush 16. Good man yourself. Great drop. Yeah, we'll figure that bit out. So now we've got our own whiskey. We'll get our own song. What else are we missing? We have our own glasses. We're going to have our own clothing soon. We'll have our own t-shirts and our own pattern for scarves and pocket squares. I have a lovely pocket square here. I don't know, did you see it when I was wearing my jacket a minute ago? But I'm going to try and create a Stories and Sips version of this. So this is my Redbreast pocket square. You can see there, upside down, is it? That's the Redbreast pocket square. So we'll have a Stories and Sips one shortly. It says Redbreast on the back there. So stay tuned. You'll all be broke by Christmas. And we're spending money on whiskey and glasses. FG asked what kind of notes I'm getting on the Bua. FG, this is a lovely crisp whiskey on the nose. To me, it's green, it's white, it's apples, it's green grapes, a little bit of melon, vanilla. There's a little bit of caramel coming through on the nose, touch of sherry, and then on the palate, remind myself again. Touch of spice, light vanilla. Again, the melons come through to me. A little bit of green apple, maybe a little drop. There's a dryness to it, dry palate, like a dry finish. Lovely sipping whiskey, actually. I need to do it more often. I haven't enough damage done in that bottle yet, but I'll do it. I'll do it. What else do we need? We need to record the waves of the whiskey coming across the ocean. That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Maybe we could put like a tracking device in one of the boxes and we could track it coming across the Atlantic. See what happens after you have a few whiskeys. You get all kinds of ideas. That's what we're going to do. We'll have Louise put a tracking device in one of the boxes. See if that gets past customs. A line of turtlenecks. They're on the way. And one of the challenges with creating apparel at the moment is the backlog with factories because of COVID-19, because of how many factories are shut down in the United States or were shut down. And so shipping was backlogged. So there's been like a 3-month waiting list for drop shipping apparel. So having apparel custom made and then shipping it from the factories directly, which is what I'm trying to do. Otherwise, I'll be living in a factory full of clothes here myself. There's been a backlog, but we're going to get to it. It's we're working on it. I think the time to ship is going down. JJ's onto the Middleton Very Rare 2017. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Karen tells me to stop drinking, stop talking, and drink up. You're dead right. I hear that a lot. Andrew reckons it starts smoky when you first taste or pour. I don't know that I get the smoke in it. Not coming through for me, but sure, listen. A lot more of you have more advanced palates than I do. But it is, yeah, they use the word lively in presence. I agree with that. It does feel fresh and lively indeed. What else have we got? Next I'm moving on to my Bushmills 21 in a second, but I think we've covered a lot tonight. We have talked about a lot. We have a bit of a milestone live stream tonight, folks. We celebrated the launch of the Lock-in whiskey, not named for us, but certainly something worth celebrating by us. And then, of course, our big announcement of the night, the story from JJ Corry being announced here tonight, which is amazing. And it is going to be available to you before anybody else. We're going to find ways to get this. I'm part of quite a few Facebook groups and Irish whiskey groups across Ireland and the world. And there is a huge community of Irish whiskey investors and collectors, which is a good thing, that people are investing and buying whiskey. But there is a downside to this, and that is the snapping up of whiskey as soon as it hits the market and the storage of said whiskey on shelves until it can be flipped for more money. Look, it's not a bad thing. Everyone is entitled to do whatever they want with their money. I'll go on the record of saying that I'd rather that didn't happen with our whiskey. I can't stop it. I'm not going to try and stop it, but what I will say is I will do everything I can to get this into the hands of people who want to open their bottle and who want to drink it. So if you are a flipper or a collector, maybe this is the whiskey that you'll open and this is the whiskey that you'll drink, and you'll do so with my blessing and encouragement and hope that you'll enjoy it, because I want more people to taste and enjoy it. Look, the lengths we're going to go to get this whiskey into our hands in the United States, it means that it deserves to be in a glass, maybe one of these glasses if I'm going to do a little bit of promotion, but also deserves to be in our belly. And that's what whiskey is for. Whiskey wasn't made to sit on a shelf gathering dust. So hopefully people will drink it and hopefully people will enjoy it. And it just doesn't line the shelves of auction sites, which have their own role to play. But I want this to be enjoyed. That is my hope, but we'll do what we can. We'll do what we can. Hashtag open your bottles, says Maureen. Oh, Dermot coming in strong here with a limerick. There once was a man from Cork, and whiskey was all he would talk. He started a show on a Friday to share stories of the juice of the barley. The crack was 90, the banter lively, and the heads were sore of a Saturday. Come on, Dermot. That's brilliant. We might steal that from you. We might put that up on the website. Brilliant stuff. Karen asks, do I find Black Barrel is too rich compared to Jameson? Such a plain Jane. You're not a plain Jane at all, Karen, and whiskey is a journey, isn't it? We're all on the journey somewhere. We're all at some stage of the journey. Black Barrel was my introduction, really, to reintroduction to Irish whiskey. It's a beautiful whiskey. It is, yes, it's a little bit richer than Jameson, and I would argue that it's maybe a little bit more mellow. It's spent a few years longer in the cask. It has benefited from that extra charring. The barrels are charred twice instead. They're set on fire twice. Once in Kentucky, and then once the bourbon leaves them, they're set on fire a second time. That doesn't happen for any other Irish whiskey. Almost any other Irish whiskey. Always have to add a caveat because there's people doing all kinds of innovative things that I'll never know about. But it's twice charred. I think there's a unique kind of a caramel vanilla contribution. It is a step up the journey. I always am slow to say it's better than, because what's better in anyone's mind is subjective, isn't it? But it is different and it's enjoyable. And if you were to offer me both, I'd choose the Black Barrel because I enjoy it more now. But I would encourage you to get a sample of it if you have access to bars or restaurants that are open in your area that have it behind the bar. Might be an easy way to try a sample without the investment of a full bottle. As Rebecca says, drink now for tomorrow we may die. Yes, if I showed you the empty bottles that have left, the empty bottles that have gathered around the waste bin in the house here from this lockdown, you would see that I too celebrate this fact. Drink now for tomorrow we may die. We have done our best to work through the whiskies that we have, for sure. Roy asks if I've tried the new Red Hugh whiskey from Cork. I haven't, Roy, I have not. I'm not sure if it's, I know the company is from Cork, Kinsale Spirits, Ernest Cantillon is the man behind that whiskey, but I believe they source their whiskey from outside of Cork. I'll stand corrected on that, but it is I know it celebrates a Cork story, a Kinsale story, but I haven't tried it yet. I do believe I have a sample of it here in one of my Belfast Whiskey Week boxes at cask strength, and I've not yet got to it, so I'm looking forward to trying that. Brian says that Black Barrel for him is a good progression towards more pot still whiskey from the grain forward standard Jameson. Yeah, it's a really enjoyable whiskey and not too much more expensive. I mean, it's probably $6 or $7 more a bottle than regular Jameson. So it's depending on where you live, of course, it's affordable and it's accessible for the quality. And if Jameson is, let's say it's 4 to 7 years of age, Black Barrel would be that 6 to 10 years of age. I don't know exactly, and somebody else will correct me on that, but that's my understanding. That's my understanding. Red Earl, yes, Red Earl, that's the one. Not Red Hugh. Yes, Red Earl of Kinsale. So, folks, listen, we have reached the end of our Lock-in live stream. It's been a marathon. It's been a story. We told stories. We had some sips. We did it all. We enjoyed some whiskies. We celebrated each other. We raised a glass to those who are in recovery, those who are on their journey to recovery, and we've launched a new whiskey. And the journey of the story starts tonight. We have written the prologue. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3 are still to come. So stay tuned, everybody, to Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group. If you are not part of that group, I encourage you, please, to join. There are 5,300 plus people in there who are kind and generous and interested in Irish whiskey. And in times like this, don't we want to find people who share our interests and who share our beliefs and who like the things that we like, because it means we hang out with community members and people who are fun to ask questions of and to share stories with. I knew that if I tried to get away without singing a song, that I'd be called back from the door and put on the spot. Maureen trying to guilt me into Not even a victory song, says she. What's the victory song tonight, I wonder? We'll do a song. We'll sing it out. We'll sing it out. The Owl Triangle. We have to sing it out with the Owl Triangle. I think that's what we'll do. At the end of every night, like I said last week, in Ireland, at the end of the night in the pub, they'd play the Irish national anthem and everybody would stand up. So maybe we need to sing the Owl Triangle at the end of every night, and that sends us home. So we'll do it. We'll do it. Jeff says, if there's no song, I'm blocked and reported. Steve says that we should host a tasting of it and ask everyone to wait until that night to open their bottles. Good idea, Steve. We'll definitely be doing a live tasting with Louise and myself. And we'll come on and we'll open those bottles. A good idea. We'll open the bottles. Maybe we'll bring on a singer or songwriter, and we'll make a proper session out of it. Maybe one whole lock-in will be turned into the story of the story. The Owl Triangle, the one that started it all. It is indeed. From my very first tasting, night number 1, first ever Irish whiskey tasting, July 1st, 2016, I sang the Owl Triangle, and I've sang one ever since. So we'll do it again. So get your glasses in your hands. Take a good old sip. You can wave your glasses in the air like you'd be waving a lighter at a concert, and pretend you're listening to an actual singer instead of this chancer who at the end of a night hawks a tune out as best he can. To make sure now we don't disturb the neighbours with our Owl Triangle singing. All right. Right, you've not been here before, I can tell. We do this every week, but you're right. A Brendan Behan song. He wrote the Old Triangle for a play. It was originally a part of the Quare Fella. That's right. And we've done this now. I think we've sang the Old Triangle every night for the past 6 weeks, and we've been singing it every night for 4 years at the tastings, and it is a staple of our Irish whiskey tastings. And Roy, hopefully you'll join in again. If you're a singer yourself, you'll have to come on and sing us an old tune one of the nights. But in the meantime, I will hog the airwaves. Such is my privilege for owning the streaming software. I get to hog it. So we'll sing a bit of the Owl Triangle. All right. My glass in my hand with a drop of Bua. A hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice were squealing in my prison cell. And the Old Triangle went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal. To begin the morning, the screw was bawling, get up, you bowsy, and clean out your cell. And the Old Triangle went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal. On a fine spring evening, the lag lay dreaming, and the seagulls squealing high above the wall. And the Old Triangle went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Oh, the screw was peeping, Humpy Gussie was sleeping, as he lay there weeping for his girl Sal. And the Old Triangle went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Last verse. Up in the female prison, there are 75 women, and among those women I wish I did dwell. And the Old Triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal, all along the banks of the Canal way. Slaunch, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for a great night. Thanks for being so part of this amazing community. It gets better every day and every week. So slaunch it to you all. We'll sing this in person at some point together. You're all brilliant. Slaunch you. Have a good night. Get your pennies ready for the story in Christmas. Slaunch, everybody. Good night.